All right. Let me just... Salam, folks. All right. Let me just check that this is going live. Right, let me just... All right. All right, so, mi gente. All right. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم. All right, people, what's going down? Vampire greetings to all my fellow fellow walkers of this path. Allah. So let's see what's going down. Who is alive? I mean, who is awake and alive at this God-forsaken hour? So I can see a few people tuning in. All right, people, you can click like, click share. You know the drill. अब काहे को शर्मिंदा करते हैं आप? All right, that I have to repeat these things. You know the drill. Click like, click share, spread the love, people. The love, the low. That's it. So let me take this. Go back to comments. All right. Greetings from Berlin, people. Ohan, you're doing it. Ohan, you're doing it. What's this? Right, who have we got in the house? People, you can switch on your cameras. Let me... all right, so I can see you. Azarati, you're doing it. Much love. Hassan Ali Yunus. Assalamu alaikum, Hassan. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Walaikum. How are you doing?
I'm good. Where are you joining us from?
From Southampton.
Southampton. Look at that. UK vampires, people. That's what I'm talking about. So, all right. So, welcome. Share with us your thoughts or comments that you might want to express. Let me just move this out the way. Yep. All right, Hassan. So is there something you'd like to share with us? A statement? A confession?
No confessions. But it's more, I've been listening to you for a few years now. And
serious, a few years.
Yeah.
You've never reached out before.
No. I actually came to one of your Q&As in 2018 at the Arc.
Vah. You're doing it, Hassan.
It was me and a few guys from Loughborough University. You might remember.
Right. Okay. Now that you're saying Loughborough University, yes, I do. That rings a bell. All right. Well, it's good to see you again and hear from you. So what's going down, man? What's on your mind?
I had a question regarding the splitting of the moon. What's your take on that?
Come on, how can you be following me for all these years and not know my take?
I know.
Yeah. This one.
Yeah, but
this one not nice, you know, this one. So this one just muska. So yeah, I mean, I've got a detailed video on it. So I think, when I say detailed, it's not so long, but it just goes into more detail. So I think watching that would definitely be good. But briefly, to me, these things that they were, I don't feel the moon actually split, but it may have been perceived in that way, and that's what Ibn Ashur in his tafsir alludes to. He says that, you know, it may have been an eclipse, a partial eclipse, which was then perceived as the moon splitting, because some of the narrations actually mention the word eclipse, kusif al-qamar. So yeah, so that's my take on it, man. But shukran for that, man. Stay tuned. Do keep sharing your thoughts and comments, and liking, subscribing. Check out my YouTube channel, man. If that you see, with that question, I'm doubting that you've checked out much of my.
No, I've actually seen most of your videos. I was watching your Andalus series yesterday. I was watching.
Bloody hell, that's been
Exactly.
many years since I
I've gone
did
back.
that.
I've gone all the way back in time as well for this.
Well, you're doing it, Hassan. Much love for tuning in and coming on live. Inshallah, stay tuned. Take care. We'll speak soon, man. Assalamu alaikum. All right, people. That was Hassan Ali Yunus in the house, all the way from Southampton. All right, doing it. Right. So let's see, who do we have here? Got a few people. Those of you wanting to tune in, not tune in, sorry, come on live. I've shared the link. I'll share it again. Let me just share that. I don't know what link I'm sharing. Look at that. Mariam says, wow, that was short. It gives other people a chance as well. It kind of like keeps it moving. You know how it is. So, all right, Claire, you're doing it. All right, so Faisal, I also have the Alpha T gear. You're doing. Let's see, who have we got here? We've got Suhaib and another Suhaib. Yeah. Mahada. All right, Suhaib Ihsan, you're doing it. Look at Suhaib. Ahlan wa sahlan to the meetup, man. Where are you joining us from? Your mic is muted.
I'm joining from Glasgow, Scotland. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Look at that accent. You're doing it with that accent, man. That's what we're talking about. All right.
How are you, Mufti? Me and my brother have been watching your videos for a long time. We really like your videos, man. Just keep up.
Shukran, man. Sahib, I appreciate it. Shukran. All right. So
I just wanted to ask you a question regarding your views on the caliphate. I think you've talked about this before, but we see like a lot of scholars, especially in Pakistan as well, they talk about like kind of the utopia vision of they want like the caliphate to come back. But if you look in history, sometimes you can see it was very oppressive, especially in like the Abbasids and sometimes the Banu Umayyah. So I'm just wondering, what's your views? Do you think that the caliphate system is Islamic, or do you think it's something that Muslims have added on themselves?
it's, you see, there's a couple of things there bundled together. There's a nostalgic kind of utopian fantasy that has never really existed, but people yearn for a glorious past. So you find that in all faiths, people will feel that, oh, we're in some terrible time and we need to return to some utopia. And so that's not exclusive to Islam or to Muslims. Human beings tend to behave that way. So you'll find that in many faiths, many religions, and unfortunately, Islam is no different. So you're going to see in Muslims also. And then then there's the question, okay, what are these golden days that we need to return to? So here comes this notion of the khilafah, this caliphate. Now, if one asks them to break it down, when was this golden caliphate era?
Exactly.
So people might speak about Sayyidina Umar radiallahu an, which really is just a decade of rulership. But So you'd ask them, what is that? Is it just like 10 years, 20 years, 30? I mean, out of 1400, 30 plus years, how many years have been this glorious kind of caliphate of which you
Do you not
speak?
think that, sorry to interrupt you, Mufti, but do you not find it
No.
interesting how you see, for example, I've studied a lot of, like in school, we used to study what Western scholars would say, and I was always interested what the Western scholars would say about Islam.
Mhm.
So you have like
Sure.
17th century Edward Gibbon. Like a lot of these
Yes,
people
of course. Yeah.
a lot of these people would describe the golden years of Islam, like under the caliphates of people like Harun al-Rashid and
Mhm.
under the Umayyads in Spain. But I think as Muslims, we kind of view it differently. When we talk about the golden age, we're kind of talking about, as you said, Umar ibn Khattab, and we're talking about from a religious aspect, but from a secular aspect, when people are talking about the golden age of the caliphate, they're kind of looking at the Bayt al-Hikmah and Baghdad and all these places. So I just find it interesting. When we look at it from a religious viewpoint, we're thinking about the kind of four rightly guided caliphs. But when you look at it from a non-religious viewpoint, you're looking at the kind of Abbasid kind of rule. You know what I mean?
Of course, of course. I mean, I totally agree, and you know that, and I think we have to, and it's not about, you know, you've highlighted, I know you mentioned Gibbon, and there's other people as well. Now, they may have had a, you know, sometimes a very critical perspective of Islam, and may have been harsh and prejudiced in their ways as well. But it's not about them or these people. You see, it just takes reason. One can just reflect over history and ask that, when is this golden period of Islam, and what do we mean by that? This, you know, do we mean that when Muslims just had a lot of wealth? Do we mean by that there was some sense of justice? Because to be honest with you, Harun al-Rashid is not really known for an age of justice. I think that's a misattribution. It's more that during his time, the Bayt al-Hikmah and the revival, there's an element of tolerance. They definitely, I mean, unquestionably, Muslims had a lot of tolerance in the past, much more than they have today, ironically. So Muslims today are quite, you know, sometimes they're very discriminatory and very kind of reactionary. But whereas in the past they were quite tolerant, actually, and that ties into your own self-esteem and kind of insecurities or lack of them. So the more secure you are as a person, the more tolerant you are of others, and the more insecure you are, the more intolerant you become. And so, yeah, so it is actually a fantasy, which has never happened. That said, the question of a khilafah is a different question. Then why the khilafah? You know, this caliphate that people, this term, this phenomenon, you give it a name. In my understanding, I've said this before, that the word khilafah never existed with this meaning in the Quran, and this is a post-Islamic occurrence. So prior to Islam, the Arabic word khilafah did exist, but it didn't mean what it meant after Islam. It turned into this kind of political term, a term meaning like kind of governance, global governance, or governance. It didn't mean that. What it
But
meant.
Mufti, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt again, but I think there's like a very famous hadith that a lot of people use, that the Prophet said that like blessed are like the four righteous caliphs after me. Do you think that hadith is
Yeah,
not
I
authentic?
think all of these are fabricated. All of these hadith on the khilafah and the evidence for it. You see, there's only two ways this could happen. One is that you could say, okay, first of all, let's go with my way, that these are fabricated. Why are they fabricated? Because this term did not exist. This word to mean this did not exist. That's point number one. That khilafah was not ever used to mean rulership. It was never used like that. And it meant a kind of like an inheritance, like something that comes afterwards. So the Arabic word did exist. So it's like saying, for example, I give let's say technological examples we have today, or the word like prime minister, like before this word came into existence, the word minister would have existed and the word prime would have existed, but it wasn't used in this particular way. So if you take this word to a date when they never had this word, that is suspect then, that is this authentic? Because how were they using this word at that time when this word was not around like that? So in a similar way, that's point number one. Linguistically, this word does not mean this. Even in the Quran, when Allah says about yastakhlifukum fil ardi, or where he says about Dawood alayhi salam, that we have made you a khalifa linnas, this was not, you see, people are reading into this post Islam. They're reading into this after the caliphate system has already been set up and Muslims have set this into motion, and now they're reading backwards and they're thinking, oh well, Adam was made a khalifa and this is what a khalifa means. And so but that's wrong. You're projecting your views onto the Quran and then reading them back. So that's not it. So Dawood alayhi salam, you see, it was the same thing. It meant somebody that comes after and inherits. Okay. That's what it meant. It was not about governance. Why? You see that he was a khalifa linnas. This was talking about the Jewish people. David, although King David, he was a king, and that's what he's generally remembered as amongst the Jewish people and Christians, as this great king, King David. He was never for the entire humanity. He was never, he did rule over a vast, if we take that theory that to be true, that he ruled over a vast empire. Now he inherits from the judges. Now, what you see, one of the problem is Muslims, we are not very familiar with the Judeo-Christian kind of history. Now, much of the Quran is addressing them, because in the time of the Prophet would be face to face with a lot of Jewish scholars, rabbis, and other people that the Meccans and at times in Medina would be brought before him. So either the Meccans would go to the northern kingdoms, they would bring back people to debate the Prophet, and in Medina at times people would come and they would debate the Prophet, and the Prophet was presenting to them revelation that they would understand. But then we've had this disconnect. So Islam starts to develop, it starts to kind of have its own culture, and we then forget about their history, that these were the people. So imagine I'm talking to you now, you're from Glasgow, you said, now you're from Scotland, you're from the UK. I may use certain things where we have a shared narrative about what we're talking about. You see, like right now, I could be speaking that actually, I don't know whether, Scotland's in a lockdown right now, isn't it? I take it is. Yeah, so imagine I'm speaking in a way where we both understand that there's a lockdown. So if I was to say something like, well, you can't find any clothes shops around you that are available to do this. Like, imagine I'm saying this, and 300 years from today, somebody is watching this and they think, oh, so where you live, there must have been no merchants at all. Like, you must have lived in some remote, but obviously I was speaking in a context of a lockdown, which you understood because you were from that very same paradigm and we understood what we're talking about. So this is exactly what's going on. People are forgetting that these verses about Bani Israel were addressing the Jewish people. Yeah. Now, and they had this history. So you see, with the Jewish narrative is that when the people of Israel, when the Israelites come to the Holy Land, right, which was Canaan, okay, which was the Middle East, which included what modern day Israel, Palestine, parts of maybe Jordan, Lebanon, this kind of region was the land of Canaan, and it had the Canaanites that lived there. Now Joshua eventually goes there. Moses does not manage to kind of make it across. With Joshua, they are successful. They do kind of get there. Now the Holy Land is then set up. There's this process. Now initially they don't have any rulers. They don't have any kings. And what happens is they kind of get these chiefs that emerge. These chiefs are referred to as judges. So in the Old Testament, you have the book of Judges. The book of Judges does not refer to judges like a judge giving a, like in a court. The judges in the Old Testament are referring to these kind of chiefs who are, there's 12 of them, and they are ruling. They kind of like, they've made a kind of allegiance in a way that these are the superiors of the Israelites that they would go to, but it's not organized, and many of these become corrupt. So what happens is the Israelites are getting attacked by the Philistines. The Philistines are not the Palestinians, by the way. I know you probably know this, but I remember once listening to some Hizb ut-Tahrir person going on about how the Philistines were originally part of the Canaanites, because look, they were there. It was the Philistines in the Bible. Those Philistines are not the Palestinians of later on. Those Philistines were Goliath and those people. So they were totally different people. But so they're getting attacked and they're getting battered and they're getting beaten. And, sometimes they might have a bit of success, but it wasn't really happening. So what happens is at the end of all of this, the Israelites realize that the only way we're going to have success is we need a king. So up until now, they haven't had a king. So you get Samuel, who is the prophet Samuel. Now he kind of comes to this understanding, and he anoints a king, King Saul. But it goes terribly wrong, and it's not really, it's like a prototype version. And from him, following his reign, comes out of nowhere King David, because he's this kind of shepherd. And he's the last person you'd expect to kind of rise to the ranks. But obviously he does. And he is then this successor who inherits what all these judges, these chiefs had left behind. And he will become this supreme, iconic example for the Israelites as a whole. Up until today, he's their blueprint, King David. So when Allah quotes, when Allah mentions this, when Allah mentions this in the Quran, that Dawood, we have made you a khalifatan linnas. We have made you this person who has inherited from the judges, from the 12 different judges and this failed attempt of Saul. We have made you the inheritor. That's what it was. It was not a caliphate system. This was not, and people are misreading the Quran. So so that's one way to look at it, that you say, well, look, linguistically, this did not exist. So the other issue was, if the Prophet was telling people about khilafah, follow the 4 khilafah after me and do this and do that, then in all honesty, the Prophet ﷺ would have, if the Prophet was going to tell us the system after him, he would have just settled the Sunni Shia debate.
That's exactly what I said. That's exactly what
you see, because it would be neglectful. That's what you see. One would be, charging the Prophet, wal-'iyadhu billah, with neglect. If you're to say that there was to be this travesty that would befall the ummah. And the Prophet, which in the hadith, he says, I'm not going to tell you. You see, this is the irony. They come to the Prophet and say, tell us what, in Bukhari, tell us what to do after you. And he says, bring a pen and bring this. But then he refuses. And he says that you guys will figure it out. And he says, I fear that if I write something that it may kind of become a curse, because you see, then people will be like, because the moment you give a particular rule, some people might interpret it to mean this, some people might mean that. What if that doesn't work that way? What if, like, imagine the Prophet appoints someone and that person dies, and so rather than this, just leave it to the people, you guys will figure it out. Now, this is in contrast to the Prophet saying, oh, there will be khilafah, and there will be a khilafah system, and there will be this, and there will be that. It's nonsense. And they didn't even know this word, that they come up with this word. What shall we call you? I know, we'll call you Khalifa. Most of the khulafa went by Amir al-Mu'mineen.
Yeah.
They did not, because they had this system, and it was Bani Umayyah who revived this word Khalifa in an attempt to forge authenticity. But yeah, so that's one way. The other way of looking at it is, no, these hadith are true, but this word did not exist. So it could be that people over 150 years later, when they are transmitting this hadith, they paraphrase it into a word that now exists. So this could be the other interpretation. But the problem with that, once again, is the second point of the first argument, it doesn't contend with, because if the Prophet was going to tell people about a system, he would have told them about, he would have settled the Sunni Shia debate. Exactly. Because, yeah, so great. I hope that's of some help. We did go on there, but cool. All right, so hey, it's been epic.
Thank you very much.
Keep up with the work. Stay tuned. Shukran, man. Much appreciated. Take care. Stay blessed. Assalamu alaikum. All right, people. That was right there. So, hey, with an intricate question, I thought, it's definitely... Look at this. Frank, I need a beta t-shirt. Today is international, or it was yesterday, I guess, or in some parts of the world still today, International Men's Day. I didn't know there was a Men's Day until I saw it on social media saying it's International Men's Day. I thought, okay, I don't know what happens on International. You have Insta stories. So I was putting up a story, and so then it goes into people's stories. Yeah. So next, and that's where I saw it's International Men's Day, and I ended up on certain stories, and there was a post by once again, I had no idea who the person was, but they said, oh, happy, it's about International Men's Day, that it's great, and we should celebrate men's thing, and a big up, really, a big wow to all trans men, queer men, bi men, men who are trampled down by other men, all this, just and I just thought, and then the next page, I remember reading that and thinking, what? Like, I don't get this, honestly. I just don't get it. And the next page said, so disgust, like it was a hate page. It was a hate kind of post to all men who, because of them, trans men are suffering, and just other non-alpha men are suffering due to this toxic kind of masculine men out there, and because of them, other men haven't been able to tune into their emotions. And I was reading this and I had to comment. I don't even know who the person is, but I put a comment on there, so they probably got it in their messages. I said, why so much hate? Like, I don't get why. Okay, I didn't even know there was a Men's Day, but if there is and you want to celebrate it, I don't know what that means to celebrate a Men's Day, but sure. But it still hating on men. And why is it that if you're going to celebrate it, you only cheering and jeering for just trans men and, queer men and gay men. And what about the majority of men who are none of these categories? Yeah, I saw some funny posts, I saw this other post by someone, and he was a Muslim, and he seems like he's some writer or something. So I did message him saying, I'd love for you to come on to Mind Trap and we could have a discussion. I don't know whether he'll accept it, but he had this post about women have to pick up the bill, basically, for men not creating an environment of feelings, like, because men don't cry and don't show their feelings, so they've created this environment. And, well, a big thank you for doing that, because now the other men can't do it either. And who suffers? It's the women who have to pick up the you know what, I don't know if I can still find it, because I commented, so maybe because of that I could find it. Let me read this out, because I thought to myself, like, surely that, like, what the hell are these people on about? Let me see if I've because I sent a message. It should show up, right? Yeah, it has. Men have no friends and women bear the burden. This is the post. Toxic masculinity and the persistent idea that feelings are a female thing, in speech marks, has left a generation of straight men stranded on emotionally stunted island, unable to forge intimate relationships with other men. It's women who are paying the price. So this person was sharing it, saying it's a very interesting article. His name's Hassam. I don't know whether he's got some links to Yaqeen Institute, but it says he's got a substantial following, several thousands of people. But I have messaged him, Hassam Munir. I said I'd love to chat about this. I mean, I don't understand why these kind of charges are kind of levied up against men, because I feel like, if men, okay, fair enough. I think it's good to be able to share your feelings, and you see, you got to understand it is hard for men to do that, because obviously, it's not a very manly thing to do. But chalo, in a safe environment to share it, I think that's good, and everybody needs to do that. But I don't know why you got to blame people for it, though. Like, fair enough, if people are suffering, they suffer in silence, and it's a shame that they have to suffer in silence. But then to kind of like blame them for it and attack them for, why are you suffering in silence? God damn it. I know, just cry. Anyway, who have we got on here? All right, people coming in. Ahmed Shuaib has been waiting for a while. Let's bring him in, people. All right. Ahmed Shuaib, assalamu alaikum, ahlan wa sahlan.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing?
I'm good. Where are you joining us from, Ahmed?
I'm in England.
Look at that. Tonight I've caught the vampires, haven't I?
Yeah, you
All
have.
right. You're doing it, man. Ahmed, ahlan wa sahlan. Is there a comment, a statement, or a question you'd like to share with us tonight on this blessed night?
Yes. Well, you probably don't remember, but I sent an article to you on Instagram, and it was about, when you talk to the light within, you were asking about in Surah Sajdah, where it says ثُمَّ جَعَلَ نَسْلَهُ. The who is the who referring to?
Sorry, say that again. ثُمَّ جَعَلَ ماذا?
It's وَبَدَأَ خَلْقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ طِينٍ ثُمَّ جَعَلَ نَسْلَهُ مِنْ صُلَبٍ جَمِيلٍ.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, of course. Okay, now I understand. Yeah.
And you probably still don't remember, but I follow. I'm the Shazad Salim's. I studied under him, and I wanted to give you.
Right, you've come on previously and spoken about Dr. Hamadi Saab.
Yeah.
You follow his. Yes, I remember. Look at that, man. Come on, people. There isn't Alzheimer's hasn't kicked in yet.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool.
Yeah. So I just wanted to present the view.
You know what? Thinking about it, you've actually got a bit of that Hamadi look going on. You know the. All right. I don't know if people can see it. You know, it's. I think is it the glasses and the eyebrows, the kind of style of it, and the. I can see Hamdi Saab in you. You know.
Yeah, I don't think he would wear an Adidas t-shirt.
I doubt that part, but yeah.
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 He's actually in 2 days. He has a live meetup, and I'm registered for that as well. So I'm going to ask a question to him as well, inshallah. Yeah. So about this Naslahum, I wanted to give my view because I love your bastion of reason. I disagree with you on quite a few things, but I still absolutely love you. And
shukran, much appreciated. Shukran.
Yeah. So let's. I guess. I mean, I can do it fast. I guess. So you know where. So Gandhi Sahib would say that where it says وَبَدَأَ خَلْقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنْ طِينٍ, that this is referring to the. So he basically says that, like you say, that there used to be humans.
Oh wait, just so we understand, this you've asked this to Hamdi Saab, have you?
Yeah,
or you've read this, you've read this from Hamdi Saab.
I've read this from Gandhi Saab and Shazad Salim.
Excellent. So how do they explain it? Okay, that's interesting.
So
because sorry, just before we jump in, what do they accept evolution wholeheartedly or no?
What they would say is they accept evolution, but they don't accept the common ancestry between chimps and humans. And you'll see, you understand in a second.
Okay, sure. Okay.
So where it says,
oh right, so evolution has happened, but Adam was unique.
Basically, Gandhi Sahib would say that common ancestry doesn't have enough proof as it is because of the Cambrian explosion not having much previous data before that and it being based. It's more of a hypothesis rather than a theory. But he says that the Quran can't accept common ancestry because of these ayat.
So, because just to be clear on his opinion, because there is the view of like Jamaluddin al-Afghani and Muhammad Abdu and those people that, look, evolution is not a problem. In fact, Jamaluddin al-Afghani, who was a contemporary of Charles Darwin, when he read his Origin of Species, he said that there's nothing new here. We already believe in this. He said the only difference is we believe Adam. So, you know, whether they were hominins and Neanderthals, and he's, you know, I'm not denying that. Obviously, they weren't calling them Neanderthals at that stage, but whatever they were, these things, he's saying, I'm not denying it. But what we're saying is Adam was, he was saying this is Jamaluddin Afghani, that Adam was a miracle. So evolution has happened up until this point, and then there's a miraculous intervention for Adam, and then we've continued from there. That's the kind of the Arab kind of reconciliation method, and I think Yasser Qadhi is also kind of on that flex now. But right. Okay, is this fairly
similar? It's kind of similar, yeah. So okay, so sure. he would say that the 3 stages are given in Surah Sajdah. So he would say, "Bada'a khalq al-insana min tin." The beginning was from clay, right? And the nature of this beginning, it would have been from Wallahu anbatkum min al-ardi nabata, that he grew you like plants. So he would say that this bringing from the teen, the same thing that happens in the mother's stomach today, it happened in the earth, and then the humans came out of the earth, right? But this is not Adam and Eve. This is just humans. They're like the animal humans. They don't have any consciousness or any soul, right? Then these humans who right now they don't reproduce, they just come out from the ground like plants. Then their progeny, it came from this mahin, it came from reproduction as we know it today. Then what happened? Thumma sawwahu. Now this is the evolution part. This is where he's being perfected. Some things are being changed. Then وَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. Then the blow was blown into him. and this was Adam and Eve. This one human was chosen, and he out of these people, out of these humanoids who were being evolved, he was chosen, and then from him came all of us with consciousness, the people with a ruh, with a soul. So that's what he would say. So the naslahu, it refers to insan as those humanoids. So that's what he would say. What do you think about that?
You see, this a bit of, like you mentioned something about that there was a, minattin, thumma ambatakum nabata, and it kind of mirrors the stages of hamal as well, of pregnancy, the kind of gestation period. This is, you do see the ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. So this theory that ontogeny, that basically the way the fetus develops, this used to be a theory that the way the fetus develops in the womb, it reflects the evolution of the species over the kind of eon, or the era in which it occurred. You've kind of got a miniature version going on in a fetus in the womb, and it's reflecting. So they would say that ontogeny recapitulates what was it, phylogeny. That's it. So now this, right, okay, but this has been disproven scientifically. You see, what I would say is that the issue with all of this, that whether what Jamaluddin al-Afghani is saying, or what more importantly what Ghamdi Saab is saying, because he's saying it in much more layers, like, there was this stage when this was happening, there was this stage when this is happening, and then there was this stage. You see, the problem with this is you're already going into an explanation of anthropology, of nature, of biology. You're already explaining stuff. Now, you see, whereas I suppose in some ways, what Jamaluddin al-Afghani was doing is he wasn't really going into it. He was just saying, I don't have a problem with all of that, but Adam, in the Quran, it seems like the language seems to imply that he was a miracle, so I'm just not accepting this. It's kind of almost like blind theology. You're kind of going in, okay, other people are going in completely blind with theology. They're just saying, we don't care about anything. The world was created in 6 days. God said 6 days, so 6 days. They said this, they said the earth is flat. They said 7,000 years is the age of the earth. That's just blind dogma.
Yeah.
What Jamaluddin al-Afghani is doing, he's kind of going in just slightly blind. Like, he's just saying, well, this particular point, I'm just going to be blind on.
Right.
The problem with this Ghamdi Saab's approach, if it be how you've explained it, is he is explaining, he's going into kind of paleontology, he's going into the creation, explaining how anthropological formation took place. He's saying, look, well, man was created like this, there was some clay, there was this form, there was, and look, we know the Cambrian explosion, we know this. The problem with this,
that's my addition. That he said.
Okay.
He says that the theory is not very strong, and my reasoning on that would be because of the explosion. He says, what is it? Tiddi ki tang pe hathi. That you put an elephant on the leg of a locust. That the theory is not. That's what he says. But
you see, the truth is that, you see, I respect Ghamdi Saab immensely. He is somebody very, to me, I absolutely love him. But that said, look, he is overwhelmingly, or he's just like incalculably undertrained in science. And he wouldn't understand, like, for him to say that there is not enough evidence just means he doesn't understand it. Because the evidence today for evolution is not the fossils. The evolution today is DNA.
Yeah, yeah.
Like DNA is mathematical. It's not like, you see, like if you're seeing, like imagine I'm seeing a pattern of there's a number 2 and everything's going up in 2s. Let's just say it's 2, 4, 8, 16. And then when you've reached in the thousands, there's a number missing. And there's a number after it. The sequence carries on. Now you can quite easily figure out what that number is. But if somebody was to say to you, no, but look, these numbers have just been written randomly. Somebody just decided to write 2, then just decided to write 4, then just decided to write 8. Now but you can see the pattern. Now we can see how our DNA, we can see all of DNA that we have mapped out where it connects. You can see where mammals split off. You can see where hominins split off. You can see where a mouse, the DNA shares with humans. You can, in fact, when they supplant certain things and they do experiments on, let's grow an ear on the back of a mouse, it only works because of it being a mammal and it's sharing that DNA. It doesn't, you see, so today, the arguments for evolution are not what Darwin wrote.
Of course.
So I think a lot of people, Muslims, haven't caught up with this. Religionists, they're still kind of like not understanding how evolution is explained. Like, you see, when you're shown a like an animal and you see something else, obviously it looks crazy. There's no way this thing came from that thing. You would think like that doesn't make any sense. And that's understandable from your perspective, because you're thinking, yeah, obviously this doesn't look like that. But if you alter just one DNA, codon, the impact it could have is maybe drastic.
Yeah.
So it would change. So if you watch these things where they show you that, with subtle changes to the DNA, things absolutely change. They're not and then it makes sense. Now I understand. So I get that Ghamidi, if he doesn't understand it, don't get me wrong. Look, Ghamidi Saab is amazing, but he is not somebody brought up in the West. He obviously spent most of his life brought up in Pakistan. Now, obviously, Pakistan, that part of the world isn't so huge on science. Now, later on, at this stage of life, he has opened up to, learning about science and stuff, but it doesn't come as a terrible surprise to me if he doesn't fully kind of grasp this. And I'm not saying this in a way to diss him. It's just like, I understand. It's not, he's from a different culture ultimately, and he's not been brought up with this kind of way of thinking. But yeah, that's what I would say generally.
I've been taught all of these things in class. I mean, I'm doing my GCSEs right now and we're doing evolution right now. And so but the things from what I've researched, you have homogeny, which is what we're taught, that similarities are due to common ancestry. And to a certain extent, you can see that. You can see the finches on the Galapagos Islands. Sure, amazing.
Sure.
But that's one theory, because you also have I think it's homoplacy. I'm probably saying it wrong. But for example, there's a saber-toothed tiger. They're both in North America. One is a marsupial, one is a placental. They have the similarities are not due to common ancestry.
I mean, they're not due to common ancestry. It's just due to the kind of development, most likely by environment or whatever it was. Yeah.
The theory is based fully on mutations. Yeah. And you cannot show life on Earth is not old enough to be as varied as it is and to be successful as it is.
But tell me, can you look, the fact that you can see, look, yes, I'm not talking about the fact that you can see DNA. No, not in theory. You can see DNA.
Then you don't have to say a tree of life. It doesn't have to be one common ancestor. Some people have suggested a bush of life. That is why DNA is similar.
No, but that's not the problem. The problem isn't we're not arguing that you see, at some point it's logical and rational that at some point the entire life spectrum would have had a common ancestor. Now, you could say, well, I disagree. It may have had two different ones. So let's say something landed here from Mars. Now, you could argue, well, simultaneously or in a similar eon, three different sources of life arrived on Earth. Now, this is how it began. And along the way, they kind of mixed up. And so it's not really one. Okay, but that's not the point of contention here. The point of contention is that evolution of species that we have today on Earth, we can see how they connect. You know, whether you're looking at vestigial organs, whether you're looking at things that we still carry, animals still carry, how you can see how the whale is actually, you know, its closest ancestor would trace back to the hippo. And you can see this mapped out. It's not something, you know, this isn't no longer just so either all of this is wrong.
It's no, but still, the assumption is still that the similarities are due to common ancestry. Even the finches coming to the
not the similarities. I'm not talking about how a whale is
similarities in DNA
similar to a hippopotamus.
Sorry,
a whale does not, you know, it's not generally similar to a hippo in that sense. Like the way the bat is not that similar to a mouse in that sense. But I'm not talking about the appearances here.
Yeah, I know.
Even though I'm talking about the DNA, the genetic inheritance. Are you saying that's just still, it's not evident?
Again, I would bring up the example of the marsupial and the placental saber tooth, which are similar.
Yeah, but the DNA there is telling you that they're different.
Okay.
The marsupial animals, their DNA does not, in fact, that is where you got that information from. You got it from the scientists telling you that, by the way, the marsupial lion in Australia, that when it did, or the marsupial tiger, when it did exist in Australia, was not actually related to the tiger and the lion in other places. And some of the other animals that do resemble them, although they may look like mammals, but they weren't related. We only get this knowledge through genetics. There's nothing else that has taught us that. So I'm asking that, are you saying that the genetics is false? Like it's just a total guess? Like they're just doing...
No. But okay, then, I mean, I'm not as specialized to talk in this discussion, but then how would you explain that when the Quran is clearly saying "Bada khalq al-insan min teen," that it's clearly being said it's the insan.
That teen is referring, in my understanding, to DNA.
Okay, yeah, I think Sajid Hamid, the student of Ghamdi Saab, I sent you the article.
It's not referring to, or if you want to take it as actual clay, then in that sense it's just a metaphor. It's not, if you want to take it as because no person generally believes that all of insan, like we as insan generally, are from clay. Like some people might believe Adam was made like that, but they won't believe insan generally, like we are from clay. So if you want to, because the Quran does not say Adam.
Yeah, it says al-insan.
Yeah, exactly. But in other places, it's when it speaks about Adam, it speaks about him very clearly. But in none of these verses about the creation of mankind does it mention Adam. Now
it refers to him. It implies, because it says nafakha fihi min ruhi, and we know that Adam alayhi salam had the
no, but that's in that's in those verses about Adam. But in the verses about creation of mankind, humanity beginning, like وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى, or the verses about we created you, then did this, and then set forth many people. Those verses come 5, and there's a 6th variant, a time in the Quran. Never does it mention Adam in them. It always just says insan or nas. It never says Adam, although Adam is mentioned on many occasions in the Quran, but never as humanity having come from Adam. And
But
I don't. The difference is I don't say that that's coincidental. I say that was intentional. But yeah.
that's really interesting. And so I had one more topic, but I think I might be pushing it, right?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few people waiting. But you know what? This was very fascinating. I did enjoy it. And, this isn't about, you see, this is about just learning.
Yeah, of course.
It's not, to me, many years ago, if you asked me, I did settle at one point with the Jamaluddin Al-Afghani view. That was my understanding. And then I started, learning whatever I could about evolution. Obviously in psychology as well, when we were learning certain things, evolutionary psychology, when we were looking at other things, the more I would learn and the more I understood that, okay, wow, this is the angle, because I too didn't understand that the main angle of evolution today, or in this day and age, is not fossils, how people, and it's not adaptation. It's not,
believe that humans come from monkeys, as in like human, they transformed. Some people.
Yeah. No, and it's not, humans did not. They had a common ancestor. That's because somebody came on here once and he said, I mean, that was the person you referred to in the beginning. Yeah, cool. But Ahmed, it's been awesome. Shukran for tuning in. Much love. Stay tuned. Salamullahi alaikum. All right, people, doing it. That was Ahmed Shaib. Right, who have we got here? Several people waiting. Let me just check. Humanoids. What's this comment? Coming out of the ground. Remind me of that Uruk high production scene in the. What's going on? What's this? The whole universe is contained within a single human being. New intellectual says, I want to get in. Well, that all depends on what in. What does in mean? Yeah, what is this one? Plumbing. I want to talk to you, Mufti. I want to talk. Yeah, I've shared the link. What's this? Plumbing the mind of God. I do feel that some of the cheats that God has left in this world for us are in nature. And they are these entheogens, these psychedelics. Does Mufti not sleep? Mufti, people, where's my thing? All right, vampire greetings, people. I'm a vampire. Sleep is for the mere mortal. Can you post the link, Mufti? I'll post it again here. There you go. I've posted it again. Right, we've got here, let's see, people waiting. There's Jawad. All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Ahlan wa sahlan, Jawad.
Ana
Where
bika, alhamdulillah.
are you joining us from?
Yes, Canada, yes.
Vah.
I have to remind you every time. I'm just joking.
That's, you have to put that down to the old age.
Yes. It's okay though.
If not me, then my ruh, that is very ancient by now. It's so all right, shukran, ahlan wa sahlan. What's on your mind? Was there a comment, thoughts, question? What would you like to share with us?
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on this concept. So because I read a lot of Rumi and Hafiz and Iraqi and Ni'matullah and stuff with these guys. So I was
These are the real people who read. People, Jahilu, read, learn from Jawad.
So I was
me, I'm reading these baby books on Spanish. What the hell is this? That's the real reading. Yeah.
And we have to read the rap book. Which rap book was it? The one that you show?
Which
The Asrar, when you talk about
oh yeah, that children's book.
Yes.
It's not going to be here.
Yes, it's not.
But yeah.
Anyway, so when I was reading them, I was seeing I was reading a common denominator between all of them, and then when I further read the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein.
He was epic.
Yeah. So he had a similar, like, in no way was he religious, for sure.
Yeah, no.
But however, he did push for a religious outlook on life. So he was I would say unique in that sense, that despite not pushing religion in and of itself, he would push a religious outlook on life. Now, my question was, I wanted to talk to you about the role.
I was just seeing that shout out, rest in peace to Shadi.
Yes. So yeah, so I wanted to ask you,
Alright.
what is the role of, what would you say is the role of rationality in religion? Because I do believe rationality has a role in religion. For example, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pushes it in many verses when he says, for example, things like, do they not ponder, do they not think, things like these. So I do believe rationality has a role. But what is the role? Because rationality changes over time, because at one point it was rational to believe in some parts of the world that the earth was flat, but today majority of people wouldn't say that's rational. So how does
You
the
see,
role of rationality change, and how does that play into religion? Because doesn't that mean then the outlook on a certain religious belief changes? So would that mean that we're denying parts of religion? That's kind of where I was.
right. Okay. No, I mean, it's a very good question. What I would say, Jawad, is just to let you know, and also the viewers, that look, I do have a very detailed video on the role of reason within religion. Now, I tend to go with the term reason, being because the definition of reason is the ability for a healthy mind to make judgment, especially based on evidence. Now, damn, I think I've got something in my eye. Right. So now so when you're looking at evidence, yes, it will change the judgment at times. You will learn certain things that will, they may alter your views. But generally speaking, reason or rationality is the best we have. I understand it too has limitations, but it is the best. Otherwise, what else is there that one can go by? What if not rationality? It is the only common, the kind of the common judge between affairs. Otherwise, there is nothing. Like, we don't have no common denominator to mediate between diversity. We don't have that, apart from the voice of reason and rationality. That is all we have. So if one removes that, then we have nothing, because we just have our own experiences, which I'm not saying don't mean anything, but then they can't really be conveyed to someone, because even when I'm conveying my experiences, it's from the rationale that you can also share in these experiences.
Yeah, then we get into the problem of empiricism versus rationality, which was a discussion that used to take place between philosophers a lot.
Sure.
So to further expand a little bit, if we have time. So when I was reading, obviously I was talking about, a lot of these are known as great people within the practice of tasawwuf. Yes. So one of the things that they push for is for finding truth through internally coming to a realization of the truth
intuitively,
and to create that relationship with a creator, to submit to the creator. Like, for example, one interesting understanding of Surah Al-Fatiha that I found by a Sufi from India was that he said that the connection between إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ and إِهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمُ was that the guidance can only come through full submission to God, through allowing God to guide you through experience, internal experience, and through then using reason.
Sure.
If that makes sense. So I just wanted to ask you what the role of basically.
Sure, I appreciate that,
I'll
Jawad.
watch your clip, but I'll leave.
No, that's actually a lecture video I have. It's an entire lecture called "The Role of Reason Within Religion," and it was an event. I went to some place and I did a whole a lecture on it. So if you get time and you're bored and it's lockdown and you're thinking, "What the hell?" do check it out.
Yeah, but I'll leave the whole audience and you with a quote from
Go for it, man. Go for it.
Wittgenstein. So he gives
Wittgenstein.
Allah. He gives a metaphor for how we should use our intellect, because he was kind of in line with the Sufis when he talked about intellect and rationality, and he said the power of our intellect and reasoning is like a ladder. We should use it to find the right spiritual path, but once we climb the ladder, we should discard it. We should let it go.
Let what go? Reason?
Yes.
Okay.
So he would say use reason to get there, but once you get there, let it go.
Yeah, because like
and I would say I agree with this, but
I would, because like, let's say I'm an advocate of entheogens and things like that. Now, let's say a person was to take a consciousness trip on one of these hidden plants within nature. You see, now that experience that you would have is not rational. It's not reason-based at all. It is something inexplicable. It is ineffable. It cannot be contained in words. It is something without structure, without form, without words. But it is so real that it is more real than this world that you know. So I would agree that, you see, there's certain things that we, for ourselves, like, we will come to realize them by our own experiences that may not be able to be rationalized, and that's okay. And I think, in fact, it's not even about it being okay. It's in fact very good. Those experiences will be perhaps in many ways far above any experience that reason can bring to you. But you see, for that to stay safe, it's the fortress of reason that kind of keeps that safe for you. And I don't know if this, even what I'm saying now, makes sense. But speaking of Wittgenstein, he has this amazing this anecdotal scene or episode where he's once explaining something, and somebody asks him, and he's kind of making a point about something being true, and somebody asks him at one point, they say, but is it really true what you're saying? Is this really true? And he says, he kind of like ponders, and he says, well, it's true enough. And that is the amazing thing, you see, because in this world, that's the best we're going to get at things, that they're just going to really be kind of true enough.
To a certain extent, I feel the more I read books on tasawwuf and stuff, that's what they're kind of preaching, that to a certain extent that you'll find truths that may be true enough, and the rest you leave to a leap of faith in God. Sure. And that's where you sort of just make the leap of faith and just trust that I'm on the correct truth.
Look, see, Zeba says it's true enough that it's the only real.
Yes.
All right, you're doing it. Jawad, shukran for your thoughts. Much appreciated. Take very good care of yourself.
Keep doing what you're doing. I did message you on WhatsApp, so.
Shukran. All right, I'll check it out. Did you message me? Okay, if there's anything, do message me.
Yes,
cool.
For sure. Okay.
All right. Salam. All right, people, that's Jawad all the way from Canada, doing it. All right, who do we have here? Let me just... all right, we've got Farid response. Wow. But Farid, we need the camera. poured the camera on, man. Let me. Oh, we've got people over here as well. Damn, I didn't even notice that. Go on then. Farid responds. Let's add Farid response to the Farid. Ahlan wa sahlan. And I know this is not the Farid, but hello.
Oh yes, Assalamu alaikum. Salam.
Oh,
Yeah.
alaikum assalam.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Earlier, you didn't give me enough time to think of a good question.
So you've come back through a different channel. You nutty. Go on then. What's the
Go ahead.
question?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I had a question regarding. I hope you haven't answered this one. It was regarding Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya. Your opinions on him and his fatwa, the one he gave about Israel and the deal between Israel and the UAE. I know you did talk about it.
What was?
But what's your opinions on Sheikh Abdullah?
What? Sorry, I just saw this. Mufti, I kiss your eyes. Have you kiss us? You kiss a scandal. What kind of scandal is this? This is where I'm getting scandalized, but even I don't understand the scandal. So sorry, coming back to the question, what do I Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya? You see, I think Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya is a great mind.
Yeah.
He's somebody who's had a lot of courage to come out and condemn terrorism, to condemn not just terrorism, extremism, and to a much needed voice for the promotion of peace. So to be able to challenge you see, you've got the far end, like terrorists. Many people will challenge them, but then you have this huge cluster of thought that is still very intolerant, extreme, fanatic. Now, most people will not challenge that, and he has been a voice that challenges that, and I admire it. I praise that, and I think it's much needed. However, I do feel that, you see, with these are my thoughts on Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya. I feel that maybe this is what he wants, of course. So what I'm about to say, it may not be, it may be by design. So I don't know whether this is by design or whether it's just happens to be that way. I feel that he's kind of missed an entire train, like he missed the boat on certain great things that he could have done. So it may be that, and this may be just, it wasn't prioritized. He wasn't bothered. It could have been that, he was bothered, but it wasn't really at the top of his to-do list. Or it could have been that, no, he designed it that way. And that is that he doesn't really have a connect with people on the ground. And he doesn't have a, it's as though his thing is not about grassroots, and he's not really he doesn't appear to really invest much effort in that either. And even the imams or the scholars, he's not really interested in connecting with people, or he's interested in the conference connecting, but that I'm separating that from the normal world, because
do you disagree with scholars getting involved in politics like him?
You see, it's not getting involved in politics that was bad, because I think some people have to, because obviously you can't, it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I don't think that's necessarily wrong, getting involved in politics. I just feel it's a shame that he doesn't. So, for example, he's really huge. Let me concretize it so it makes sense, because what I'm saying may not make sense to people. So let's give a positive example. Like, he spoke out about the caliphate being a myth. Now, he did that outright, and that was it was a tsunami, because when he did it, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf did it. And so it was like, wow, shook the foundations of many people, and it did great things. So he's prepared to do that. So he's prepared to take on extremely radical points of view. When you think about it, that is not something minor, that's huge. So there's other views as well. So for example, he's been asked about, can the Sharia change? And I've read articles online that he has said at conferences that the Sharia can change. The Sharia can, and this is the view of many Malikis. I've done, kind of points on it, Imam Burzuli and all these things. And I've mentioned it, I've got videos on it. So he said that at a conference. So for example, and it's all over, if you Google it, it comes straight up that, Sheikh bin Baya said that these laws need to change, they're outdated, the Sharia allows it. But now he won't, for example, do videos or something for the general public to explain this. He will do it only at a state level. And I feel that the problem with stuff like that, like he's really big on maslaha, on maqasid, really big. But yet maqasid requires several fatwa. Like maqasid is a theory. It's a grand theory. It's like, it's a tool. So it's like saying, there's a particular tool in this toolbox. But people want to see products. They want to see what the tool can make. It's like saying, I've got a 3D printer, but what does it make? So maslaha would mean, let's say, oh, the Sharia changes. Okay, he said something in a conference somewhere. But everyday fatwa, now he won't issue, even though I'm sure he does issue them privately, but he doesn't make that public for the public. He's not going to help the person on the ground with that ruling.
That is true. You don't hear much from him, apart from through Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, maybe here and there.
Yeah, and as an example, I met him several years ago, and I remember once saying to him, look, would you like, I asked him something as an example, let's say Ramadan, daylight, and it was that the days were incredibly lengthy here, and this was when the topic was hot and fresh. So about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. So I said to him, Sheikh, there's all these hadith that mention that many of the companions used to eat into the dawn, but so long as it was before sunrise. Now I said, look, you've got precedent, you've got hadith, you've got the maslaha, you've got the strange time that we're going through, the twilight period. I said, would you, give this fatwa? Now, okay, fair enough, he won't give the fatwa, but he won't, like, this would be an issue that he won't really even discuss or even go into, even though it's an issue that concerns people. It concerns so many people.
But do you reckon some scholars, they won't say anything because they find something controversial?
Yeah, exactly. Now, this is my point. So
a lot of Saudi scholars, like, otherwise they get put in prison.
So my point is, if you're gonna only be, but think about it, the khilafah thing is an atom bomb.
Yeah.
But just because, you see, then what people are going to see is that you're prepared to take on controversy, but if governments ask you to do it.
Yeah.
Because you see, the way the people then see it is, oh, because the UAE king has asked you to do this, you've done it. You've taken, that's a huge atom bomb to say there was never a khilafah. I think that's way more controversial than saying you can eat into dawn. But you see, here, this issue doesn't, like, well, no king is going to ask you to say this. No government really cares whether you say you can eat this or do this. So this, if you're going to do it, it's purely for the public. So when there's a disconnect that you do things that are huge, but only when they're linked with the government. Now, I'm not saying his intentions are bad. It may be that he sees them as more important. Yeah. But this is how the world will see it then. The world will see that, you don't, when it's to do with the common Muslim on the ground, you don't really issue any fatwa of ease. You're not really involved. Okay, maybe random one-off. Like even if you think about it, his fatwa, I think, to do with saying Christmas and all of this, they were, I think, when he was part of a fatwa forum, that I think it was the European fatwa, whatever. But even that, like, there hasn't really been a video or anything to explain it. And I don't know whether he actually, people might say, well, he doesn't do videos anyway much. But yeah, so that's my thought, that I feel he is, there's a huge, not a huge, there is the overwhelming impression is he's disconnected from people. And then there's an impression that he's just working for the government of the UAE, because that's the only time he's seen to do something that's so amazing, is whenever the government wants it. And like I said in the beginning, I'm not saying that that's whether that's by design. It could be that it is by design and he's just prioritized it. It could be that he's just not got round to doing these things. But it's a shame. That's what it is. Cool, man. I think we better quite a bit of time to that. No. Cool. Take care, man. Stay blessed. Much love. All right. Very interesting question there. So, all right. Who else have we got here? We've got Quran-centric believer. Allah. Let me just. Somebody said, "Yo, Mufti. Yo, Mufti. Yo, what's going on? I found you some murids. Bring them right on, man. Bring them right on. Where is the link? Here's the link. See, people, there's the link. All right, Quran-centric believer. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Right
alaikum assalam.
Eat something. So I'm still chewing.
Allah. I think you've got something.
Basically.
All right. Where are you joining us from? And what's your name?
Taking so long, still getting hungry.
I'll tell you what. I'll come back to you if you want. I'll come back to you. Don't. I'll come back to you. You can, if you want, finish up eating.
I'm good.
Okay. I think you've got something. All over it. I think you've got something on. Okay, it's fine. Chill.
Okay, so I was a Quranist. So you might remember, like with Edib Yüksel, you had that debate.
Oh yes, I did.
I was getting more
it was a discussion. It wasn't really a debate, but yeah, discussion.
Discussion, yeah. And then with Jake Brancatella, and he brought his points. So basically,
yes, with Jake,
I've been studying more and more the issue of the Sunnah and the validity and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been finding, like, as I'm finding more, like, maybe this like tradition does make some sense, like the prayers, the fasting Ramadan, and this whole in Quranism, everyone's basically like debating, and everyone like no one agrees even what Salah means. Some say it's 2 prayers, 3 prayers, 5 prayers. So I'm thinking this can't be. Like, maybe there is a validity to the Sunnah. So do you have maybe any points for someone who's doubting that? Some points of why you believe it's valid from a Quranic standpoint? And
the Sunnah?
Specifically with regard to verse in chapter 5. Yeah, the Sunnah. And in Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 48, it talks about we sent to you the book, and then it tells the prophet, and it says, judge by what God has sent down. So the Quran argument is, well, the prophet only judged with the Quran based on this verse. What was your response to that?
Okay, so right now, you see, so 2 questions there. First of all, this verse that fahkum bainahum, is it the one fahkum bainahum bil? No, this is the are you talking atiullah wa atiur rasul? Wa in ikhtalaftum farudduhu ila Allah wa rasul.
No.
That
I think it's chapter 5, verse 48. It talks about we sent down the book. Something like probably like anzalna ilayka al-kitab, something like that.
Okay, sure. But anyway, I mean, nevertheless, I mean, the meaning is the same thing that you're saying. I mean, we've understood the gist of. I'm not sure exactly which verse you're saying, but I can try and bring. What verse did you say? 50.
So basically, the chapter 5, verse 48.
5. Okay.
And the argument is, well, he was only allowed to judge with the Quran based on this verse. That's the argument. Like, what do you say to that?
Right. Okay.
Because I'm
just
actually considering the traditionalist perspective. Like, I'm open-minded to the.
Okay. وأنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه من الكتاب ومهيمنا عليه فاحكم بينهم بما أنزل الله. Yeah, that.
Right.
ولا تتبع أهواءهم عما جاءك من الحق. Yeah, but then I don't understand like this. So okay. So this particular Surah Ma'idah, verse 48, and it says, and we have sent down to you this scripture. We have sent down this revelation. Yeah, rightfully, it kind of validates that which went before it from scripture, or from kitab here. Let's say if it means revelation or scripture, because obviously it doesn't mean an actual physical book. Wa muhaiminan ali. And it is something that supersedes that which went before it.
Right.
Yeah. Fahkum bainahum, and judge by them or rule between them or over them with what God has revealed.
Right.
Okay. So and do not fall into temptations or desires, and this is what it's وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ right. عَمَّا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Do not fall into temptation or desires to that which will lead you away from the revelation of God.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Allah says, لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. And we have made a different kind of narrative and scripture for different nations amongst you. So okay, so I don't see how that is so when God says basically that follow what God has revealed or judge by what God has revealed, I don't think what that means is, because just to be clear, nobody is denying the status of the Quran. As a Muslim, nobody is saying that what God has ruled in the Quran should not be judged by. What people are saying, can there be other matters in which people can have other rulings or have other... So the Quran obviously gives an overview. It doesn't give every single thing. It's not going to go into... or are you going to say no? It does give every single thing in the sense.
No, you see where I'm coming from is I've realized that some things are just taken as axiomatic. Like for example, in chapter 62, verse 9, it says, "O you who believe, when the call is made to the salah on the day of congregation, hasten to the remembrance of God," right, and leave off all trade or all selling. I mean, it doesn't say, on a specific day, there's going to be this salah. Like, it's already being done. It's already being implemented by the Prophet.
Because nobody is arguing against the Quran as a Muslim. What they're saying is there will be other matters. So, for example, you have that verse which I was saying earlier on that Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. So obey Allah, obey His Messenger, and the people who have some authority amongst you. فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ. But if you disagree in something, you've had a dispute in matters.
Right, yeah.
What do you return it to? فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. So bring it back to Allah and His Messenger. Obviously, it doesn't just say Allah, because there may be matters which Allah hasn't that they're not in the Quran, or they've not been legislated, or there is leeway in. Like sometimes it's not black and white. You can have certain matters. It's like the hadith, let's say, where the Prophet ﷺ, he gives a person something, and then the person's overly critical of the Prophet, and the Prophet says, you know what, well, actually, by default, you only deserve this much, so you know what, that we're going to take that back. You can only have what you deserved. What I gave you was extra. Now, I mean, I'm not sure. So, okay, coming to the other point of the question.
The point is like the judgment, I guess, like the whole point. Like, for example, like one could say, okay, well, the salah and the practices, the zakah and all that, that was all like taught by him. But when it comes to like judging a matter, we can only go to the Quran. Do you like? I don't know. Like, I guess Sunnis don't like see the verse like that.
So
am I viewing it in a too restrictive way, or what do you think?
No, that particular verse is speaking about prior revelation, isn't it? It's trying to say that, look, there has been revelation before. This supersedes it. Follow revelation. Do not follow temptation. It's not to me, that's not trying to say that, by the way, you will have other rules amongst you as a civilization that are not necessarily, you'll still rule by them as well. So, for example, would you not have road traffic laws? Would you not have like what I don't understand what, like, it's not trying to say that humanity will only have these laws that are now highlighted in the Quran. You'll never have any other laws. Of course, you'll have plenty of laws and rules and how to set up corporations and how does a person, I don't know, you have so many things that are in law. They're not all, obviously they shouldn't go against the spirit of the Quran, but it doesn't mean that they will all be in the Quran. Like, should you open a window looking out into your garden? What if it can look into the neighbor's garden? I mean, so all of these kind of rules that you have. So when the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Muslim, there's a hadith about the Prophet trying to say, leave a certain amount of, when you're building your wall and a house, there should be so many arm spans of a pathway. So in case people want to pass through with, on horses and things, there should be a certain distance to the pathway in between the alleyway. It shouldn't be too narrow. Now, the Quran's not going to say things like that because it's not going to really get into such finite kind of detail on how social customs and conventions and rules, but it doesn't mean you can't have them. I think it'd be very primitive to assume that societies can't have rules and laws.
So, do you believe that the Sunnah is revelation?
What does that mean? So my understanding,
Sunni argument is that basically Prophet Muhammad.
My understanding is that the Sharia, referring to the legal aspect, that's in case sometimes I know some people by the term Sharia have a different definition. So when I'm saying Sharia, I mean the legal aspect. Laws in and of themselves are not necessarily holy. They are social. They are a social remedy for the social solutions of the time. It's just the vehicle in which they were delivered, in this case, the Quran, that was sacred. It was not the law that was sacred. So otherwise, the previous civilizations wouldn't have gone against it. It wasn't like Allah in that same verse says, لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. They had different laws. So the fact that you shouldn't drink alcohol, they were allowed to drink alcohol. So it wasn't that this alcohol not drinking thing is so sacred that God forgot about it before and then remembered. These are just laws for different times that people will have. The laws of the Sharia, if you take the Quran, every single law within the Quran was a custom that was already in existence somewhere in that region. The Arabs, so for example, the Quran may have modified certain parts that it felt were oppressive, but it didn't introduce it from scratch. It didn't kind of come up with a kind of concept that the Arabs totally was alien to them. It didn't do that at all, ever. Like, so I mean, I'm not sure when you're saying, do I feel that this is revelation? Is that what you mean? Do I feel that it is
talking about the things in the Quran,
sacred?
Like, I mean, we don't have to get into like the whole debate, like Sharia, like changing over time, because I don't really agree with that. But
Sure.
It's more about the whole.
But it makes
yeah.
Because the question, I think, in essence, is the same. I think when you're asking is Sunnah revelation, you're asking the rulings that the Prophet gave through Hadith, are they sacrosanct? Is this is, I take it, what it boils down to.
Is it do those things apply to us?
Sorry, you broke up there.
Are they revelatory? People will say, well,
but when you say, are they revelatory? What you see, because when you're saying, are they revelatory, are they, it does come down to this thing, are they in and of themselves sacred?
Well, that's what I've read. Like the standard Sunni argument says the Quran.
So let's say as an example, to shave unwanted hair.
Okay.
Is this a sacred act? Is it, according to you?
Well, there's nothing on it in the Quran, so I mean, I wouldn't.
So okay, I'll tell you what. Let's take a ruling from the Quran, huh?
Okay.
So if we're going to say something, Allah says about if you're going to إذا تداينتم, if you're taking a loan, ashhidu, have witnesses. Is this a sacred, holy act that you feel that this is somehow? Does this act, is it sacred? This law that God has said.
It's a judgment from God, so we should follow it.
No, I never said that. I asked, the question was, obviously it's in the Quran, it's from God, but I'm asking, is it sacred?
I don't know what you mean by sacred.
Is it holy?
We can't change it.
Like, what's so special about that law, apart from the fact that it's in the Quran? But is there something in and of that law itself that is very holy?
I don't know. It's just, I just know that God.
Okay. Is it? Yeah, but what I'm trying to ask is, would people come up with that law anyway? Is God introducing this, or were people doing this anyway, and God is just reminding them that do it this way?
I mean,
or is this something introduced? So no, let me get this right. So no, humanity had never known of having witnesses when taking loans. God introduced it in the Quran by saying, hey, humanity, when you take a loan,
really.
no, it is relevant because you see, because it then touches on the ontology, the ontological nature of revelation. Because you're asking about revelation. Now here we can see the nature of revelation in this particular ruling. So this particular ruling, is it sacred? First of all, must you even do it? So do you, if you were to take a loan and you did not have a witness, are you sinful?
Probably. I think I should have obeyed. I believe that you should obey that rule. I do believe so.
So is this is like an act of worship? Is it to take a witness?
It's a ruling from God. It's a ruling.
No, I never said it's not a ruling from God. I'm asking. I'm not asking. Is it? I know it's a ruling. It's in the Quran. The point is that is this an act of worship? Yeah. Is it holy? Is it an act of worship to take a witness? So let's say I was you were messaging me tonight, or I was messaging you. I would say, sorry, I didn't catch your name earlier on. What was your name?
Timur.
Yeah. Okay, so Timur, let's say I'd message you and said, hey Timur, have you got £500 on you? You could borrow me. So you say, yeah, no problem. Here, I'll PayPal it to you, or whatever. Or here, I'll send it, or do a transfer. So let's say, or you had asked a friend. Now, nobody had witnessed that. Let's say you're on the phone doing it. It wasn't in text messages. You're on the phone, and I'd said, look, hey, could you lend me, £500. You say, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll go into my bank and I'll just make a transfer to you. Now, you never got a witness whilst you did it. I never got a witness whilst I said it, and we never, let's say we never wrote it. Now, are we sinful in the eyes of God?
Probably, because sin is transgression of the law, right?
So, I mean, no, so you tell me, are we sinful? Obviously, I'm going to say, of course we're not. But so I mean,
I don't want to go on to this the tangent really, but I believe that, you know, if we do have a command, we should follow it. It's not like we could say like, oh, you know, it says this, but let's just do it differently because we're in a different time. I don't follow that line of thinking. But I was
okay,
like,
so there is this is a famous verse of the Quran. It is the longest verse in the entire Quran,
right,
called Ayatul Mudayana.
Right.
إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى. First part, sorry, I didn't even mention the first part. فاكتبوه. You must write it down.
Right.
Must we write it down? What if, you know, I mean, let's say we never, like in that particular example, I just asked you over the phone. It doesn't actually say that, but it would say that فاكتبوه إلى أجل مسمى. Sorry, فاكتبوه. Let me bring up the actual verse and we could go through the.
Just from my memory, I thought it did say that.
Right. So, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين لا أجل مسمى فاكتبوه وليكتب بينكم كاتب بالعدل, and let this person write it amongst you with justice. ولا يأبى كاتب أن يكتب كما علمه الله فليكتب وليملل الذي عليه الحق وليتق الله ربه ولا يبخس منه شيئا. Now, and then it goes on, because this is the longest verse, as I mentioned. فإن كان الذي عليه الحق سفيها أو ضعيفا ولا يستطيع يمل هو فليملل وليه بالعدل واستشهدوا شهيدين من رجالكم فإن لم يكونا رجلين. Then it goes on about whether the men, you know, 2 witnesses, whether they should be men, and if not, then let them be 2 women instead of 1 man, and so on. Now, in this particular verse, writing it down or having witnesses over it, scholars, let me just tell you, scholars do not believe, generally speaking, that is mandatory.
Okay.
They say this is for safeguarding. Yeah, that Allah is mentioning this. So he's highlighting that this is how it should be done, because these are matters that often become disputes. So to keep a record is there to prevent disputes. So what the fuqaha say is ma yufdi ila niza', that which is highly likely to end up as a dispute, you should have witnesses over it, and you should have documentation, you should have records. So when you get to that stage, you can say, look, here's the record. It's not to do with worship. It's not a worship related act. It's not sacred or holy just because Allah has revealed it in the Quran. This is good practice. That's what it is. Because why is it good practice? Because it's going to save you a headache later on. Many of you.
Okay.
And not just a headache, it could turn into an actual fight. It could turn into bloodshed. You know, you could say, well, where's my money? And I could say, well, what money? You never even gave me money. And now, so this is, and the same thing with sorry?
That's why we need to witnesses.
Right, but you don't need it, but it would prevent the dispute later on. Allah says, "Faktubuhu," you know, write it, even if we didn't write it. But the point is, these are rules that were taken from society. It's not like the Arabs didn't know about witnesses. They used to do that anyway, but some people didn't do it. And the point is, Allah is pointing out that take this route. You know, if you've got a chance, take this. It will, you know, it may be a bit more of a headache, but it will prevent dispute later on. So it's not, so when I say to you, the act of writing down a debt is that, you know, it's revelation, but it's not sacred. It's not a sacred, it's common sense of the time that is being told that adopt this common sense, make it practice. So when you, so if we accept that point, now, in light of that, what would you like to ask about the Sunnah?
So, I mean, I don't really agree on that point, but
okay, let's go to that point then. So let's say a person, no, because it is an important point. So let's say if it was sacred, then disobedience is a sin. A sin, according to, do you believe a sin is punishable by hellfire?
Not necessarily one. It's up to God to decide.
No, it's up to God to forgive, but let's say he doesn't forgive. Is the act punishable? So whether
it might go on your scale of bad deeds, maybe go on your scale or something.
So which is about punishment, isn't it? That's what the scale of bad deeds is about. So so the point is that for not having written down a debt, right, God would throw you in the hellfire potentially to say, well, why on earth did you not write down?
No. Because
Of
it's
course
not
not.
it's not a
Of
major
course
sin,
not.
but it's not
That's-
for me to decide, so I don't know.
No, but of course not. That would be that's not what the verse is talking about.
We could make that argument about all like smaller things. We could make that argument about so many things.
No, that's because it is that way. That's exactly what it is. That the rules in the Quran were just rules that the Arabs already had.
Okay, so
some
let me
people
ask you
were
a question.
practicing them.
So, for example, if it says for a zina, lash them with 100 lashes, or cutting the hand of the thief, do you think that we shouldn't follow that?
So I have a detailed video on what is called trajectory hermeneutics. Now, the Malikiya, many of them had the understanding that, like I've mentioned, the laws were from that day and age. As the day and age changed, the laws would change because they would reflect the day and age. The laws weren't holy. So, for example, whipping someone is not a holy act per se. It's obviously something. Islam didn't invent whipping people. People were whipping people from time immemorial. So Islam did not invent it. God didn't reveal it as in, oh my God, before that we had no idea we could whip people. So as the day and age changed, and as punishments change and society changes, you would change, the law would change.
Doesn't even that verse that we talked about before, who's better than God for people who know? Like, who's better than God as a judge for people who know?
Right, what verse are we talking about?
I think it's the same somewhere in that passage, right? It's the whole thing is like from chapter.
Yeah, but
5.
the point here is that chapter, that whole verse is talking about previous revelation, and it's saying that this has come musaddiqan lima bayni, and it's come muhaiminan alayhi. It supersedes it, and God knows best, because people would say, well, why has it superseded it? So Allah is saying that he knows best. Nobody's denying that. Nobody's challenging that. Revelation, when it came down, when it came down, this was for that society that it came to with those laws in 7th century Arabia. This would have, if you said to them something else, it wouldn't have made sense to them. If you said to them the way we have laws today, that wouldn't have made sense to those people. It would have been a totally new concept to them.
Let me just go back, because we can agree to disagree on that point. I just want to go back to this point about Sunnah and stuff. So, for example, the 5 daily prayers, right? The fact that there are 5 prayers, right? For example, it's not. People can debate about it, but I don't think it's like explicitly in the Quran, right? Like, it doesn't say you need to do Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, 2 rakah, 4 rakah, etc. Right? That is not in the Quran. People would argue that's revelation from the Sunnah. What do you think is revelation that was given to the Prophet as part of the Sunnah, or what category of information is that?
Is the Salah? Are we talking about, or are we talking about the Salah?
The timings, the timings of the Salah.
Okay, so the Salah. Do you, just to ask you, I don't know, do you accept Salah first of all? Maybe you don't accept Salah. Do you accept Salah?
I do believe it's a ritual prayer.
Okay, sure. Okay, so the Salah. Do you I don't know where you stand on this, but I don't think
Sure.
it's not a matter of opinion. But anyway,
Okay.
if you are aware that Salah, the Arabs already had Salah. You do understand that they had
knew about that. Yeah,
not just not the word, they used to worship in a similar rish. Obviously, the Salah in Islam over time got modified, but the kind of the skeleton of it was already there. The Arabs used to. So when the Prophet was praying in Mecca, they knew that he was praying. They didn't think like, so for example, if you turned up to Alaska or you turned up to the North Pole, and these people have never seen somebody pray before in their lives, and you go into ruku, now those people wouldn't know what you're doing. Like, they would probably think, is he trying to look for something? What is he? That was not the reaction of Quraysh. The Quraysh looking at the Prophet weren't thinking, oh, is he looking for something on the ground? Is he lying down on the floor? Is he finding something? They knew he was praying. They knew they had Salah. They weren't. This was not something new that the Prophet invented.
But
they already had Salah.
It's not
Say
the
that
same
again,
though. So it
so it was modified.
Like...
So it was modified over time. I agree with that. So, for example, we recite the Quran in it. They may have glorified Hubal and these things, other kind of deities, Lat and Uzza in it and stuff like that. So obviously the formation of it got modified. I'm not denying that it was modified, but I'm saying that the skeleton of it did exist. It wasn't introduced from scratch. It wasn't something which the example I gave of turning up in the North Pole and doing it. It wasn't like that at all. They knew exactly that the Prophet, in the beginning, in the early days, it looked very similar to what they were doing. Later on, it got modified, like where they placed the hands got modified, how many raka'at got maybe modified, stuff like this. But in the beginning, it would have been very similar.
Did it get modified?
So, as in,
which information would it get?
Right. Okay. So here we know that the Prophet ﷺ showed that this is how you pray. I take it the question you're asking is, would the Prophet have a license to legislate independently? Now, this is something
to legislate, but like, because I think the general argument is that Jibreel showed him through revelation.
Right. It doesn't whether he did or not, but this is an usuli debate which I have spoken of in the past, and I do agree with. I agree with all the. There's been several Malikis. Imam Juwaini has it in his book. Other people have it in their Subki. All these people will discuss it in usul. That is the Prophet a Sharia. Is he also somebody that comes with Sharia?
Okay.
So. And so people disagree on it. I would go with the understanding that, yes, if the Prophet was to legislate, he too would legislate. He would come up with certain rulings. He would say things. So the Usuliyin, right, they say, وَلِنَبِيٍّ that a Nabi has the authority, لِيَحْكُمْ, that he can give a ruling or do something, whatever he does, that will then be deemed the truth, as in, correct, as in religiously correct. So in the hadith, when the Prophet is asked,
on people that came after,
so it would be
would
part.
That be binding on us today?
I mean, it depends what you mean by that, but yes, it would be part of Islam. It would be part of the religion, however you view it. So for example, people viewed it in different categories. So sometimes some of the Iraqiyin viewed anything the Sunnah brings can never be mandatory, can never be haram. It can only be recommended or discouraged. Some people viewed it in different. So I'm not saying when you say binding, that's only speaking of mandatory acts.
People don't have to pray 5 times? Are you saying people don't have to pray?
No, I never said that. I'm saying that you're asking me that the number 5 prayers, for example, this is something the Prophet showed. I agree. The Prophet showed that. It's not clearly in the Quran. I know people try to show it. I think in the Quran
It's
there's
not in the
traces.
Quran. Definitely, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not
sure.
in the Quran.
But I think you can find like what the Quran shows are like kind of like traces, and the substance is really in the Sunnah, and it's the living tradition that was inherited from the Prophet. Similarly, the Hajj thing and other things as well, you will see
I agree.
that.
I agree on that.
So when the Prophet is demonstrating, because he was obviously living amongst people, he would be, you know, for over 2 decades, he's living there as a prophet. So he's dealing with matters, he's showing things. When he's acting out and exemplifying these rulings, that kind of life that he's breathing into these things, does he have a license to create things? So I am with those usuliyin, those scholars that say the Prophet has a license to create. And for example, the hadith where he is asked that is, do we do Hajj every year? And he says, "Law qultu na'am lawajabat." If I was to say yes, it would become obligatory. Or in the other rulings where they say to the Prophet, where he's describing a parameter that is sacred, and then somebody says, but we need this particular tree, and then the Prophet says, okay, that's an exception, and he's making an exception there and then in real time. And this is because it comes back to that argument that and the explanation I gave in the beginning, that rulings are just social remedies to social solutions. They're not sacred in and of themselves.
So are the 5
this is why
sacred? Is the number 5 sacred?
So no, it's not about the number 5 being sacred, but salah is salah is an act of worship. Now it is a ritual. It is entirely a ritual from A to Z. It is not a kind of like when I spoke about having a witness for a debt, that was nothing. There was nothing sacred about that. There was nothing worship related about it. It was just human transactions, and it was just telling you how to adopt a sensible approach to prevent disputes further on. Now that you can turn away from it. You can come up with your own versions. You can come up with today contracts, different contracts, 28-day clauses. You can do all of this. There's a license to it. Now, when there is a pure ritual that is there, so Allah is saying, do the Hajj or do Salah. Let's say Salah is a perfect example. Salah existed before. The form, kind of in its raw form, existed before Islam came. But now the Prophet is setting out, he's delineating that this will now be the Salah for Muslims. We will do it with this many raka'at. We will do it with, and he has this license to do it.
So
now what he does,
it's not revelation. So it's just dispensation, essentially. It's a dispensation.
No. So these are not rukhsas. These are the Prophet ﷺ showing you. Now, if you're saying, where is he learning it from? Is this what you're asking? Are you asking, where is the Prophet learning this from? So this obviously, now, we're not in the mind of the Prophet. Many people here would disagree. Some people would say that he's learning this from revelation. They would say that intuitive revelation is coming to him. Other people may argue that he is shaping this out. That he knows that you have to pray, and he can modify it because he has this license to create. He can do it. He's doing it creatively. He's doing it. It's not a form of revelation coming to him.
So are you?
But it's okay. So some people. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying some people would say that. But the point, we don't know because the Prophet doesn't explain it. What we know is he shows us this is the Salah. Now, okay, he says that this is it. We know Allah says pray, and he says this is it. Now, did every single aspect within that Salah come to the Prophet in some kind of revelation? Did he create some of it, adapt some of it? So for example, there's a hadith that some companion said, Rabbana walakal hamd. And the Prophet said, that's an amazing thing that such and such has said. And we should say, sorry, he added to it, and then the Prophet said, that's a good thing. We should add that in Salah. Now here it's like the adhan, for example. The Prophet is saying to the people, how should we do the adhan? And they're coming up with ideas. They're saying we should, ring bells and we should do stuff. And then they're saying, well, the Prophet sees this dream. And they're doing this, but then people say, hayya ala salah, as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. Was this not? So there's a whole debate about this was added. It was not actually from the original adhan.
And it's contrary to what Jake said. Remember, you had Jake Brancatella on, and then you had Edip Yüksel, and Jake kind of talked about this like wahi, just the whole saying that the Prophet Muhammad got revelation other than the Quran. And that was like his main argument against the Quran.
No, you see, I'm telling you that I can't recall exactly Edip's point on it or Jake's, but I'm telling you, I've said here that look, Salah is a perfect example. Salah existed before Islam came. Allah says, وَمَا كَانَ صَلَاتُهُمْ عِنْدَ الْبَيْتِ إِلَّا مُكَاءً وَتَصْدِيًا. That their salah was like this. They had a salah. Like I've told you that the Prophet was not like a person praying in front of, I don't know, Eskimos who have no idea what he's doing. They knew exactly what he's doing. They knew he's praying, but he's just praying to the one God as opposed to their gods. So it's not, he didn't come with something that was alien to the people. It was very indigenous. The prayers were indigenous, the fasts were indigenous, the Hajj was indigenous, everything was indigenous. He didn't introduce something from like the Indian culture to Arabia. He didn't introduce something Chinese. It was all Arab, and he kept it Arab. So it's not, now the Salah existed, the Prophet modified it, and he made changes, and he structured it. So over time, over 20 years, it changed. So it didn't begin that way. I'm sure in the beginning it was very similar to this, except he just didn't do the shirky things. He didn't worship, he didn't praise Hubal and Lat and so on. Now, over years, he starts to change it. So you have hadith that talking is now forbidden. They could talk. You have certain hadith about they stopped flapping their hands. They used to do something with their hands. I'm not exactly sure what, but it mentions in Bukhari, there's certain hadith that they stop doing. They say that don't do that anymore. Now, there's certain practices that they change. These changes, where is the Prophet bringing them from? Is it, I said that the scholars would disagree. Some people would feel that this is revelation. Now, we know it's not in the Quran. So it would be some kind of intuitive revelation that God is giving him. Some scholars may feel that he had a creative license as a prophet. He could fashion and shape the salah. He was just told, you got to do a salah, and he has this prophetic license. I don't feel necessarily either is a problem. I don't feel whether he had a license to shape certain things, which I do believe in other matters, he definitely had a license to do it. So, and we see that in the things like where he's saying, if I was to say yes, it would become mandatory. In the Hajj perimeter, he had a license. Now, did he have a license in Salah? I don't know. All I know is that this was the Salah that we inherited from him. Whether it was by prophetic license, some of it was fashioned, or whether the whole thing was fashioned just by God alone, I guess we'll never really know. But but scholars would be divided on it. Yes.
So you're basically saying it's not. We don't know if it's revelation or not, because that was like Jake's main point. Like he got other revelation.
No, look, listen. You don't look. You only know the Quran came from the Prophet. You don't know anything other than that. The link between the Prophet and God, you don't know that. That's just faith, isn't it?
Sure.
Like you can only trace things back up to the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nobody can trace things. You can't trace it to God. How can you trace it to God? Show me how you trace it to God. How do you trace it to God?
They claim it's like all revelation and stuff. So
no, I'm asking you. So it's faith, isn't it? It's not, you can't trace it. So when you say, look, this is from God, that's obviously an understanding that you've applied based on a faith that this is coming from God. Otherwise, all you know is that this is what the Prophet gave us. He gave us the Quran. You don't, obviously you don't know. You weren't
Aren't
there
you
when
strengthening
you...
the Quranist argument?
No, not at all, because I'm
No?
telling you that everything came to you from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
And therefore
Now,
it's binding. That's your point, basically. So it came from him.
no,
therefore
we're
it's
not talking
binding.
about binding. Binding means it's compulsory and mandatory. I'm not saying it was mandatory. I'm saying to you that it came from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, a whole life came from him.
Sure.
He obviously wasn't just somebody that disappeared after 60 seconds. He lived an entire life amongst people. So
Right.
now in the Quran, it said things and he lived them, and you only inherited what he taught. You didn't inherit it.
Yeah.
You couldn't bypass the Prophet. You can't go from us to God. You only, your final stop is with the Prophet. And then it's his word that this is how it is. So the Prophet is saying, well, this is the Salah. Now the question is, well, okay, now the rest is our interpretation. Scholars have kind of looked at it and said, well, generally the Sharia, did the Prophet have prophetic license or not? And it's a debate. Like some people would say, yes, he did.
Can I just so we don't run out?
Yeah, I think this has gone on quite a bit, actually.
The license and stuff. I just want to ask you real quick. The main point with the Salah is, like, for example, Quranists will say that if you mention Muhammad, for example, in the Shahada, you have Muhammad, or you say like the Salam or the Tashahud, basically, they say this is shirk because you're addressing the Prophet.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Any detail you have of Islam today, of early Islam, so for example, where the fact that the Prophet was in Medina, anything about the Prophet that you have as information today only came down through reports. It did not come in the Quran. The Quran doesn't even explain exactly where the Prophet was. Yeah, so no, but your belief. So do you believe something about the Prophet? Do you believe he lived in Arabia, for example?
No. See, I don't.
Do you believe the Prophet was an Arab, for example?
See, I believe that we can like ascertain certain things. But I'm
No,
saying, like, for example.
No, so I don't understand what the, like, look, if you take Islam, 95, I don't know, if even more than that, but the understanding of the narrative of Islam as we have it is really through the reports. Whether now there's going to be a lot of falsehood, there's going to be a lot of manipulation, I get all of that. But the story you have of Islam, the story that you actually have, like when you said, oh, well, the Prophet did this, the fact that the Prophet lived in Mecca, this story that you have, you didn't get that from the Quran. The Quran never told you the Prophet lived in Mecca. The Quran never told you the Prophet lived in Medina. The Quran never told you the Prophet lived for 22 years as a prophet. No, it doesn't. Yeah, but Yathrib being Medina, who told you Yathrib was Medina? Like you, now the point is that you see what, like you, the overall understanding you have of almost anything of Islam today has really come down through the living tradition. Now I get the fact that things would creep in and things would be distorted and things would, but to say, you see, the challenge with just the Quran, like if you take the Quran in itself, is actually quite very enigmatic. Like today, you've seen the whole Makkah question that people have presented.
Yeah, the Petra thing, yeah.
The whole thing, the reason why they can present these things, because they even say the Quran is actually a book that if you take it, it doesn't clarify anything about its positioning. Like apart from speaking about God and saying believe in God, don't believe in false idols and some rulings, it's kind of like free floating. It could be anyway. Like you could take the Quran and place it in China and just say, look, this is what it's referring to. Like it's not unlike the Bible, which goes through complete
history, yeah,
geographical, like everything. It tells you everything in detail. The Quran doesn't mention anything like that. I think it mentions the name of maybe 9 locations or something. It doesn't mention otherwise anything. It's just, even the stories are so kind of enigmatically expressed and in such a short way that you could superimpose them on different stories. It's not, it's not that difficult. Even the chronology of prophets is not clear in the Quran. Which prophet comes before which? Maybe with 1 or 2 you could say okay, but the others, it's not clear that, was this prophet before this prophet? Was he after? It's not actually clear. The Quran doesn't. So this is why even these Orientalists they can ask these questions, because the Quran alone, it doesn't lock into a kind of GPS. Its positioning is very enigmatic. So look, I'm not saying to people that they need to follow the kind of like the hadithist thing, or they need to do this. I myself am against dogmatism, hadith dogmatism.
Sure.
But I would say people who adhere to this argument of any narratives, let's kind of all narratives should be dissipated, any narratives, and we should just have scripture.
No, I don't follow that thinking. I do think that we should learn from and take into account the tradition and look into it.
Of course.
What would you be your message be for someone, for example, who's thinking about becoming more of a traditionalist, coming from a Quranist background or Quran centric?
I would just say, look, just ponder over this, what I've just said, that the whole message of Islam as you've understood it has really it has not come to you in the Quran. Yes, the Quran has the core message of one God, and that this world is not the end of. That is these are the core messages within the Quran that are repeated so often, and it has this message that there is revelation and prophets have come before and civilizations have been before and collapsed. That message exists in the Quran, and here and there's some rules that have been mentioned. Obviously, the overwhelming narrative of the Quran is not rules and laws. Like people say, there's 500 verses of ahkam. There's 6,600 verses in the Quran. That's a tiny fraction. So, yes, the bulk of anything we understand about Islam, whether it's the life of the Prophet, how revelation was coming down, what were the stories, what were this, what were that, any narrative we've got of Islam has come to us through these reports. Now, I get the fact that we can be cynical and we can be skeptical and we have to things have to make sense. But to me, to say, well, okay, because A, B, and C doesn't make sense, let's throw everything away. To me, what it leaves you with lacks any kind of depth, and it lacks any true flavor. Like you're kind of neither here, neither there. You're in a.
That's definitely because what I've been noticing with Quranists is people don't agree on what Salah is. People don't agree on what Ramadan is. 2 prayers, 3 prayers, 5 prayers. Zakah is this, zakah is that. There's too much disagreement. And then when I look at traditionalism, it's the disagreements are about in a very narrow scale. They all
I agree.
By Salah.
Well, yeah. No, I agree. And it's not, to me, look, it's not, if a person wants to pray, if he feels there's only 3 and he prays 3, or he feels, it's not really, to me, it's not, to me, it's the overall message of Islam that is lost, and the life of the Prophet and everything. The Prophet completely disappears the moment you say, nothing about him then, all of a sudden, because everything is then suspect. And somebody said, look, the Quran mentions that the Prophet is Arab. It doesn't mention necessarily the Prophet is Arab. It does say that this is an Arabic Quran.
Right.
Now, but if the Prophet could have been, so for example, I don't know if today you will consider those northern Arabs as Arabs, but they were Arabs as well. What's to say that the Prophet wasn't somebody that, for example, knew Arabic but wasn't an Arab? I'm just saying, going by the Quran, it doesn't mention that. It just mentions that this is Arabiyyun Mubin. This is a clear Arabic Quran. And it only mentions the word Makkah once when they're going on Hajj. it mentions the word Makkah. Otherwise, it never mentions the word Makkah, and it does not. And when it speaks about Yathrib, it does not.
Can I just get a quick?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sorry,
Hello?
you've gone silent. Yep.
Okay. Can I just get a quick comment? Just because this is like the biggest thing about like traditional versus Quran alone, which is kind of keeping me in the middle, is, for example, the claim of like Edip Yüksel and other people that claim that, for example, if in the Shahada, if you add Muhammad's name, or if you do the Atahiyatu and the Salawat on the Prophet and so on, and especially the the Salam, you give the Salam to the Prophet in the prayer.
Hello?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Sorry, you kind of like I lost you there for a while, but you're just saying that
they say that if you do in the tashahhud, in the atahiyatu part basically of the prayer, if you're adding Muhammad's name or asking God to send salawat, or especially the where you're doing the salam directly in the second person, like alayka to the Prophet, they say this is shirk. What do you think about?
I mean, that's I don't need to think about it. It's dumb. Obviously, it's stupid, isn't it? Like, this whole thing is, look, it doesn't really require an explanation. I find the unnecessary extremism that some of these people have, it makes zero sense to me. It's such a fanatic viewpoint. This viewpoint of calling people kafir and calling people, mushriks, and calling people all of this stuff, I find it very, obviously antithetical to the message of Islam. So I mean, if you address the Prophet, obviously the Prophet isn't here, but if I was to say Ya Muhammad, and if people were, like they say, they write on things Ya Muhammad or Ya Nabi or Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I don't think in any way it's shirk. It may not mean what you think it means, but it's not shirk. Cool. Let's wrap this.
Okay.
Because he's not God. Right. So I'm surprised that even requires an explanation.
That's a big thing.
There's only one God. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
Cool. Let's wrap this up. It's been
shukran
for we did go on quite a while there. Whoa, I got distracted there. Right. So people, I know there's been quite a few people waiting. Let's try and keep them a bit short now. Bob the Builder saying something, or disagree on things until the end of time. I'm sure we will. I want 15 minutes with Mufti too. Mariam, you nutty. Majid, you're a legend. Okay, you're a legend, Majid. I don't know what that's talking about, but Muzammil, right? Let's bring in. Assalamu alaikum. Muzammil, you're doing it. Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Bangalore, India.
Vah. You're doing it, man. Kya baat hai. So, what's going on? Words, thoughts?
No, it's been great session. A lot of questions were answered, but I wanted to hear your thoughts about a couple of things. Now, when we take this one particular ayah that says, one who purifies his soul is the one, that will be successful, or he'll be the one that prevails, right? Tazkiyah of nafs, purity of self and soul, right? Now, when we take this concept of purifying self, now the question is, we don't know what it is. Like, how do you differentiate between this is me and this is not me? Because everything around us is a social construct, right? The things that we learn, the traditions, the rituals. So what we're thinking is, okay, we can't really differentiate between, what it is that we are versus, basically what's not me. And when we dive deep into it a little bit, to try and understand who we are, there's a couple of things, right? So in your modern sciences or yogic sciences, you've got consciousness, awareness, understanding your existence and things like that. So there's two things.
Yeah, and
One,
that's
Mhm.
no,
So
that you see, that's what these things are simply, in my understanding, talking about. That قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها. You see, these things are talking about, to me, the soul, okay, which is consciousness, which ties in with also your to a lower extent to your conscience as well, and morality. But you see, you, by refining these things, are becoming a better human being, and that is true success. قد أفلح, that is a person that has then attained true success by becoming. It would ultimately, its manifestation would mean that you've become a better human being, somebody who cares more, somebody who's more compassionate, has a higher understanding of humanity. That's what it would mean. But you could take the understanding of being blissful in the afterlife as well. So both, it gives that both perspectives.
So when we look at it now in terms of our deen and worship, our goal is to attain ihsan in the way we worship, right? And so when it comes to purification of self, now here's my question really. We got two concepts. One is the well-known tasawwuf, and if we look at history, which predates Islam, we've got yogic sciences, right? So when you dig deep into Vedas and Upanishads and things like that, and that has a detailed breakdown of what our human properties are in terms of breaking down your consciousness, your state of existence, and conscience as a property of you, but not exactly you. You see what I mean? And staying within the spirit
I feel
of,
like I need to take some mushrooms to understand this conversation better. Sublog, everyone, on three, let's take them together.
when we look at it in terms of seriously connecting with ourselves, understanding who we are as a creation, and unifying ourselves to be able to connect with the creator, right, from mysticism point of view, right, without crossing the line of going out of deen, and grasping the roots of zikr, and trying to concentrate and being able to achieve that state of mind to say that okay, you are in a deep meditative state where you have clarity about yourself. And then what we could do is we evaluate ourselves into, okay, these are the things that are not me, which I need to purify and attain ihsan in the way I live my life.
If I've understood your question, I think what you're saying is that can we use other methods of, like how you've got the yogic and you've got these other kind of meditative practices to heighten consciousness, and is that also a kind of tazkiyah? Does that still fit this verse? I would say, look, sure, anything that if it's meditation, if it's for some people having some other practices, if it's for some people anything that can bring you to a more pure, a refined self, a better you, is welcome. I feel that, look, the Quran doesn't explain. It does say, it says, about قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا and these kind of things, but it doesn't mention how to do the tazkiyah. Now, I mean, some people may say, well, it gives some indications about doing dhikr of Allah and stuff, of course, but my point is it doesn't highlight exactly. There's an assumption people will kind of know along the way. And yeah, so I feel if that's the question, yes, you can, there's nothing wrong in meditating and doing things. If it makes you a better person, go for it, Muzammil. You're doing it. You're doing it. Cool. Let's. I think because we've gone on quite a while with not with you, but with the other person. I was going to try and squeeze in a few people whilst I can. So cool, Muzammil. It's been epic. Take care of yourself. We'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. All right. So some questions there about meditative practices. I think I'm not sure what they. Right, we've got here. Who have we got here? We've got new intellectual people. New intellectual. Yeah, new intellectual. Kya hai? Assalamu alaikum, new intellectual.
Walaikum assalam, Mufti Sahab. I'm sorry, I'm not showing you my face because I'm an ex-Muslim. So
पकड़ लो साले को.
पकड़ लो मुझे. मैं पाकिस्तान से हूँ. I'm also from Pakistan, but living here in California. Please visit California, Mufti Sahab.
California sounds so awesome.
Yeah, I'll make biryani for you.
Kya baat. So,
Mufti Sahab, I want to say, if only Islam was like you, the whole of Islam was like your mentality, it would be hard for me to leave it.
Islam is like this. It's much better than my mentality. But logon
no, sir. Your mentality is better than it. I love your mentality over the actual doctrine.
What is the biggest problem?
The thing is, the biggest problem is philosophy of the whole religion, the whole philosophy of religion. But what I like about you is that you are pro freedom. You do accept other people's opinions. You're not as harsh as the other muftis are that I have talked to, and they have given me nothing but said, "Oh, ye baat nahi kar sakte, beta. This is wrong." So they've kicked me out, and I have actually researched a lot, and my research was actually from the Quran itself, not from hadiths or not from other sources, other secondary sources. My questions came directly from Quran, and they could not answer it. So I hope that Mufti Sahab, if you can give me some, if you can satiate my.
Sure, inshallah, I'll take your questions. Just as a little footnote to what, just before we just go into the question, just so people hear this as well. That look. The message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been so morphed by people to, in their own image as well. Yeah. Now, we will find on so many occasions, you will find these other narrations that they've still trickled through, but people will still try to push them out. I mean, whether it's things like, somebody had asked about prayer earlier on. It's this thing where a person came to the Prophet saying, "Look, I can't do this," and the Prophet said, "Well, what can you do?" He says, "Well, I can." Okay, do it. It doesn't. Now, people, you'll have somebody saying, "Look, I don't wake up at that time." He said to the Prophet, "We don't wake up at that time. I ain't gonna pray subah. We only wake up at this time." The Prophet said, "Okay, the stayqadta fasalli." You get out of prayer, you get these different. But the point is that obviously people have tainted.
Mufti Sahab, this is not. Mufti Sahab, but this is not even the problem, Mufti Sahab. This is just the ritual. Praying is nothing.
No, sure. I understand.
And
but it's
also,
like, So sure, let's go to the questions. That might be more
Mufti
focused.
Sahab, the question, the thing is that even the terrorism, and the forcefulness of other Muslims on other, this is not even the problem for me. Even violence is not the problem for me. You know what the problem is?
What is the problem?
The problem is the metaphysics. The problem is the myth. Yes, the problem is myth, miracles, and magic. I can't believe that.
First of all, the magic thing, I don't think is not really in the Quran anyway.
It is. But okay.
But
so Sihr isn't?
No, and every time sihr is mentioned, Allah mentions in the Quranic perspective, it shows that it was just an illusion, because it mentions saharu a'yun an-nas, that they did sihr on the eyes of people, and in the other verse it mentions yukhayyalu ilayhim min sihrihim annaha tas'a, that it was they imagined that the sticks were moving as snakes. Now, this is why very early on, people like Imam Abu Hanifa and other people did clearly say there's no magic, has no reality. But yes, people believed in the medieval ages.
Sir, they didn't say magic has not reality. They said that you should not believe in magic. Miracles actually...
magic. People like Imam Abu Hanifa and other people said la haqiqata lahu. It has no haqiqa. It is only a tawahhum. It is a kind of illusion. That so what they did is But I have, by the way, I have a very detailed video on this to watch it as well. But yep, carry on. About which miracle?
Miracle. Okay, so when you said like about magic, right? Okay, you said that
because I've mentioned that there's no Allah does the laws of nature are from God. He does not go against his own laws of nature because they are set out by him. So I don't know. There's nothing in the Quran that goes against that state to go against. Yeah, but like what? It doesn't actually. I've got like every single miracle you can imagine. I've got a video clip on it probably explaining. But which one comes to your mind?
Okay, a stick, a non-living thing becomes a living thing. For example, a stick becomes a snake by the will of God. That is, you know what?
It never does. That this was a no, it never does. Now I've mentioned. Are you talking about the staff of Moses?
Yes.
So first of all, the sticks thrown by the other people, the Quran clearly mentions that it was not. It was yukhayyalu ilayhim. That it was just they imagined that it was happening. Now, when Moses throws his stick, there's two interpretations that I feel fit here. One is it mentions the actual that when he threw it, talqafu ma ya'fikun, that it consumed what they were fabricating. Now, this particular verse, there's two ways to understand this. One is some people felt, oh, it turned into this snake and it consumed it. The other is that it consumed their fabrication, their lie, because when he threw it, he exposed their magic. So the two verses, and I'll explain the other verse.
This is your interpretation.
No, and I'll tell you why this interpretation.
You know what, Mufti Saab, I would love this interpretation over the magical interpretations that people
it's not. But the
in.
Quran, but the Quran. You see, so for example, in one of the verses, there's 3 verses about the staff being thrown and the snake. Now, in one, it clearly mentions that there's ka'annahal, as though it is a snake. In one, it's left ambiguous, and in one, it mentions فَإِذَا هِيَ ثُعْبَانٌ مُبِينٌ. It is a snake. It is a clear serpent. So now they're all verses of the Quran. Now you can't say, well, this, because this one is saying it's not a snake, it's as though, and this one is saying it is. Now, so one of these is definitely being metaphorical.
Okay, Mufti Saab.
So whether you're going to say, if it is a snake, then in the verse where it says it's as though it's a snake, that verse is very clearly saying كأنه, as though it was. It's not saying it's a snake. Now, now the Quran is not clearly saying that. Now I understand, you can take from it that the verse is saying, oh, that it turned into a snake. The other interpretation, by the way, which I am more inclined to in recent times, is that Moses was Akhenaten. And this Akhenaten, he was the Pharaoh Akhenaten. Now, this, what he threw here was the royal scepter. And it was because the royal scepter that they had this snake head to it. And only the pharaohs had it, because if you study the life of Akhenaten when he goes off and he comes back, how did they know? You see, because one of the questions is this, that Moses goes away Yeah.
Okay.
And this is generally accepted, whether people believe in Moses or not. But the story that they accept is Moses goes away for many years, does he not? He goes away to Midian and he marries and he does all these things and he comes back years later. He comes back much later. Nobody, whether they believe in Moses or not, they don't deny that story from Moses' life. So he stays there at least 10 years or whatever. He's in Midian. He comes back much later. How does he get straight? How does he go straight up to the Pharaoh? How does he get this the FaceTime?
Because he was raised in the Pharaoh's house. This is according to the Islamic narrative.
No,
right?
no. Even according to the biblical one, he was raised in the
yeah.
Pharaoh's house. Nobody's denying that. But you see, how does he get up to that? Because he's coming back years later, his age, he's this old man, and just because he says it, they're gonna the royal guards, the palace, before he even gets to the Pharaoh, how is he being let through?
The fact is that
like he just says, he just says, oh, by the way, I'm this person. They say, oh yeah, come through.
Yeah, because he was raised in Pharaoh's house.
But that's so. First of all, nobody's saying he wasn't raised. He was from the palace. Over a decade ago,
and he killed a person, away, and he was a criminal.
Yes. So he's being allowed to
wanted. He was wanted from the beginning because he killed a person.
No, so he's coming back after all these years. Apparently, his face, he's probably grown a beard now, hasn't he? Because the pharaohs, by the way, didn't used to have beards. You know, archaeologically, no, I like
how you're shaved too.
No, I'm being very clear. This isn't. You can just Google this. It's not like So the statues that the pharaohs had was a clip-on.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and I don't know. Did you know that? Because I never used to know that before. You did know that.
I know that.
Okay, that's very impressive because most people don't know that the pharaohs' beards were actually clip-ons that they used to use for ceremonies. They were actually clean-shaven, and they had this strict thing about being clean-shaven. So when he's gone away, he's come back. He's got this beard now. He's aged, but this. So according to you, and he's wanted, but he's coming from a long way where this must have been hundreds of guards along the way. They're all giving him access to come right in up onto the Pharaoh just because he's a wanted convict.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
fair enough. But to me, it doesn't. To me, that does not make sense. To me, the fact that the Quran alludes to on several occasions this staff of his, this scepter, even in Surah Taha, he is asked, now, وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا Musa?
Yeah.
What is that thing that you have in your right hand?
Yeah.
And he says, it's my staff. Now this, and he goes on to explain, to justify why he's got it. He says, "Here asaya ahushu biha ala ghanami. I use it for sheep. Atawakkau alayha. I lean on it. I do others." Now this, from a revelation point of view, this is quite. What's the purpose of this revelation here? This, what is the point of this particular verses? Even if it is made up, even if it's not from God, but what is the there's some mystical purpose.
See, so
what is the mystical, the deep purpose here?
The deep purpose over here is basically to challenge the authority of Pharaoh.
No, because this revelation is to do with God asking Moses, "What is that in your right hand?"
Yeah.
So what is the purpose of that? Because he's not at this time. He's not in Egypt, is he? He's not, or he's not at Memphis or wherever. He's not. Yeah. He's definitely nowhere near the pharaohs. So he still has brought with him this staff.
But Mufti said, look at the big picture too. These stories are not coming from any non-Muslim sources. These are coming from Islamic sources.
But they are if you're looking at the story of Akhenaten.
Now,
Akhenaten is one of the earliest monotheists that we have. Now, you see, in that version, if that be correct, Moses still took with him the royal scepter, because part of the thing that the pharaohs had as their recognition was the royal scepter. Now, when he takes that with him, this was the thing that he is being reminded of in the Quran as well. This highlight that there's more. You see, why has he brought it with him? Now he's just saying, oh, using these excuses, oh, I've got this, but because of the deep value that it has. When he goes back, when he throws that in front of the
Pharaoh.
No, not the Pharaoh. In front of the magicians. He doesn't throw it in front of the Pharaoh. He only throws it in front of the magicians, and they submit to his authority because he was. You see, because the Pharaohs, if you look through history,
why did they submit to his authority?
Yeah, because if you look through history, right, after Akhenaten, it's the kind of military leaders that take over. The pharaohs go through this whole fluctuation of turbulence. They're not actually these great, even
but why they have to mention magicians?
They're not.
Why they're mentioning magicians?
They're the best of the best, ain't they? That come.
No.
Now the
magicians
pharaohs
don't topple Egyptians.
The pharaohs, no, the magicians don't topple them. They don't topple Pharaoh.
Why Quran is basically saying that magicians were mystified? So it basically implies that there was miracles happening. Basically,
no, but they are like if they are like the high priests that come. Okay. You see, pharaohs come from a royal lineage. They are special people. They're not like you see what happens. As you study history, as it's been documented, after Akhenaten, there's a bit of a kind of like a throne grabbing that takes place, and it fluctuates. There's Horemheb, and all. I think in the time, if you go with Akhenaten version, when he comes back, I think it's Horemheb. But these were all chiefs of military. They were not from the pharaonic lineage. Now, but Akhenaten was. Now, you see, according to, if that story be true, and he threw that as a symbol of power to recognize who he truly was, to me, that actually does carry a lot of sense. Obviously, over the generations, the story has been changed. It's turned into, obviously, the Israelites along the way changed it. And the Quran, kept it enigmatic, but kept it still similar to the story of the Israelites, because it is addressing the Israelites. Sorry?
So basically, it was a lie.
No. Basically. No. Who said it's a lie?
No, I mean, it's like the miracle is a lie.
But the Quran never claimed it was a miracle. Where did the Quran say it was a miracle? As in it broke the laws of nature?
Yes. Why? Because a staff becoming a snake and eating the other snakes. But I told you the
verse. I told, first of all, the Quran never says it ate their snakes. It says تَلْقَفُ مَا يَأْفِكُونَ. يَأْفِكُونَ is a verb. Okay, so it's consumed. تَلْقَفُ, it's swallowed. مَا, what? يَأْفِكُونَ, they were fabricating. That is a verb. It is not ya'fikun. Anybody, this is a plural verb, what they were fabricating. Now, it does not say that it swallowed their snakes. Show me one verse in the Quran that says it swallowed their snakes. This is the only verse. تَلْقَفُ فَإِذَا يَتَلْقَفُ مَا يَأْفِكُونَ.
Okay.
It consumed what they were fabricating.
You know what? Actually, this is making me. This is very pleasurable because you are bringing this naturalistic worldview.
No, I'm not bringing a natural. You see,
which is actually good. Which is actually good. I actually like this view. I would look.
I have detailed videos on all of these things, on whatever you can possibly think of. I've probably. I mean, if there's another big one coming to your mind, I'll answer it now. I know I don't take up too much time, but go for it.
Oh yeah, no. There is one, like for example, Ibrahim's birds, when he said that, show me how there's going to be life after death. God said to him, get some birds, cut it in pieces, put it on the mountaintops, and ask them to call them. And the birds came back to him. And and this is actually one of the main reasons. Like for example, Ibrahim.
See, you haven't heard any of my replies, have you? And so obviously the problem is I won't be able to do justice here because obviously, but I've replied to this very clearly, once again, just using the Quran. I've not, so the way when you said to me that, the Quran says it swallowed the snakes, and I said that it doesn't actually say that. The actual wording of the Quran says it swallowed what they consumed. Sorry, it consumed what they fabricated. And it uses a
yes.
verb. It doesn't
Yes.
actually say that it did. So now you can walk away saying, oh, I want to understand from that it swallowed snakes.
Yeah.
That's your, and the Quran does that to allow people to take different meanings. Now, but it doesn't categorically say, it could have easily just said it swallowed their snakes, but it doesn't. So here, the Quran as well, it clearly uses the word فَجُزْهُنَّ إِلَيْكَ. Sorry, for what I'm saying, فَسُرْهُنَّ إِلَيْكَ. Now, what does this mean? So the Quran does not say anywhere clearly that he cut them up. But it doesn't.
You know, I've actually listened to your video with Vito Vids, and basically he makes a meme where he says, you know, this is the truth, and you were saying, what is this truth and what is this?
Yeah, but look, listen, I understand because no,
naughty.
No, that part he was talking about music and sound. Where I said to him, where he said that, look, what is reality? And I said, reality is not, because he was talking about truth. And I said, well, what is truth? Because truth is reality, but this is not reality, objective reality. Colors don't exist, sound doesn't exist. And he couldn't get past the colors do not exist, don't exist in the real world. This is a reflection of light, isn't it? Being absorbed by the human eye. It's not it's not real. So my point was that in objective reality, there is no color, there is no smell, there is no sound. These things and he obviously he could understand the others, but he couldn't understand sound, and he was thinking sound has an objective reality, and it was getting frustrating because I was trying to explain to him sound waves are just picked up by the aural faculties and interpreted. They don't have an objective reality beyond being waves. They don't have this sound that you're hearing right now. This is only being heard by the human ear, and it is being interpreted by the brain. It doesn't.
So sound is an energy, though.
No, there is sound waves. Obviously, the waves are vibrating, but the waves are not these words. Do you understand? Like, this is an interpretation, a reading of it by the human ear. So
do you think
but anyway, I mean, you can check that with physics and just Google it. But the point is that obviously that he was understanding the rest of them, but he just wouldn't understand sound, and he got caught up assuming there's objective sound. And I was trying to explain to him because it was about music, and I was explaining to him it doesn't actually exist. But anyway, that's not the point.
No, I love you, Mufti. I love you anyways.
No, the point here is, look, I understand you see what you don't want to do. You see, I understand that you're saying that many Muslims won't agree with my interpretation, and that's a fair point. But your other argument is an argument from ignorance. And that's not a strong point to come from. You see,
no, my argument is actually
my
argument is from reality. My argument
it's not from reality, because you're using a verse which I'm explaining to you, but this is the problem, because it's like if you're explaining hieroglyphics to me or Chinese to me. Now, if a person doesn't understand it, they don't know whether what the other person is saying is true or not. But it is like, look, take a look at that actual verse. فَخُذْ أَرْبَعَةً مِّنَ الطَّيْرِ, take 4 birds. فَسُرْهُنَّ إِلَيْكَ. Now this verb sur is not, what does this mean? Now sur does not mean to cut. It is not the verb used in Arabic like iqta or idbah or it's not that verb. The other problem with this verb is the challenge is, why does God say, okay, let's say many of the mufassirin said this means to cut. Okay, let's take it hypothetically. If it meant that, why does it say fasurhunna, cut them, ilayk, towards you? What does that mean now? Like, how does that make any sense? Fasurhunna ilayk, even if it meant cut them, why cut them towards you? Now
it also says that basically make those birds, make manus. How do you say, like
fasurhunna, exactly, and that's exactly what it meant, because it comes from the word surar. This is when you kind of like, you do that whistling and you're making a sound to bring them to you.
Manus, what do you call manus?
No, that is actually in Arabic, as in to have an affinity with them.
Affinity,
and this is what the verse says. Now, what you do is you bring them to you, surhunna, this sound, this kind of sur that a person makes with this sound, bring them to you. Then, until you take care of them, you kind of foster them in a way, have this affinity. How do you can't just get, I can't just get birds and they're going to have an affinity with me straight away. That wouldn't happen. I have to kind of take care of them. I have to kind of feed them. An affinity is taken, you know, it doesn't mention, it doesn't go into the details, but let's say you've had them for a certain amount of time. They have this affinity with you. Then, ثُمَّ جَعَلْ عَلَى كُلِّ جَبَلٍ مِّنْهُنَّ جُزْءًا. Then, and now this is the problem. People, now they said a juz means a portion, so it does, okay, you could understand that, but the previous verb did not mean to cut. You're forcing an interpretation. What this verse meant was to have an affinity with them, right? And then place one of each four on these hilltops. Then ثُمَّ ادْعُهُنَّ.
Then call them. So where's the miracle in this?
No, listen. No, there was no, look, we did,
because
you see,
Ibrahim in the first,
look, Ibrahim alayhi salam in the verse said to God, right, alayhi salam says in the verse that, look, I am not, it's not that I don't have faith, but I want certainty. How do you bring the life, but how do you bring the dead back to life?
Yeah, which is a miracle.
God said, that which would be a miracle, but by the laws of nature in this world, faith must remain faith. Otherwise, if it's empirical, it's no longer faith. Then it's
he was
meaningless.
Asking it for an empirical evidence.
So
he was asking
now,
for
but what was the reply?
Evidence.
What was the okay? So if the reply is no, so let me what happens here? Right, what happens is he fosters an affinity. He places one of the four birds on each of the hilltops, he calls them and they fly to him. And Allah shows him.
इसमें special बात क्या है? इसमें special.
अबे यार मैं खत्म तो करने दो ना यार. I'm trying to finish every time.
Mufti sir, I respect you. I want to kiss your hand, Mufti sir.
The point is no. So the point is that what Allah is showing him is by having this tiny affinity, these birds, instead of flying away, flew to you. The soul has an infinitely much more greater affinity to God. Now that was the sign. Now you might say, well, no, this doesn't make sense to me because I want to see it as a dead body coming back to life. If that's the case, okay, let's say that's the case. Why does the verse say make them have an affinity? They don't need an affinity to you. You just catch them, cut them, put them. Why did the verse actually says no? The verse actually reads that you have to harbor them. You have to kind of foster them for.
That's not the essential thing. That's not the essential.
But why though? That doesn't make any sense. Then that's a spanner.
Nothing makes sense.
Surely. Yeah, it all makes sense. But if only you see, Allah says, "Ibratan for li'ulil absar," for people of insight. You see, the problem is you're misunderstanding Revelation. Revelation was not this kind of textbook. It was more like an art. See, now you're reading it as though one reads a storybook, and you're thinking, well, like this is how. And that was never what Revelation. It was a Quran. You see, it was not in the sense, it was not something that was just, the whole purpose of a Quran was about its recitation, its rhythm, its art, that it kind of, the kind of reaction it evoked. Now, I understand it has stories and narratives in it, but the point comes back to, look, these verses, yes, you can say to me, Mufti, many people don't believe what you're saying. I'm not debating that. That's up to them. But what you can't show me is what I've said is wrong by the actual Arabic of the verses. Now, and I, in all these videos, cite references. I don't just make them up. If you watch every single video, I will cite scholars who have said this.
No, Mufti sir,
I'm not coming up with. Now, you might say, well, today the majority of the people don't believe it.
I totally
that's-
like your interpretation. I totally like that. If this was the dominant orthodox interpretation,
It's not
I
about,
would,
look, the Quran
it would
itself
be
says,
very,
no, the
very
Quran
hard.
itself says, وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. That if you're to follow a dominating narrative, you will only forever be misguided. That is actually the verse of the Quran, is it not?
Okay.
So now, look, I can ask, look, it's the same thing I said to Vida Vids, it's the same thing I said to Haris Sultan, same thing I said to Abdullah Gondal. I said to these people, it doesn't matter what you say. This world, you cannot explain it. You cannot explain consciousness. You cannot explain that something greater exists. Now,
yeah, I can if we go by reason, not
okay,
by.
go on and explain consciousness.
I'll explain it. Consciousness is mind. Is your mind?
Yeah, but that's just another word. What is mind? What is the mind?
You have to focus it on yourself, which is this mind of yours.
What is the mind?
What mind is your awareness, is your basically the only,
mind is not awareness. Awareness is awareness. What is the mind? What is consciousness? What are these things?
Consciousness. You should you're looking at it from a religious mystical perspective.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm asking you. You said to me, I'll explain it through reason. Explain it through reason.
Okay. Mind is your volition, your awareness. Volition? Yes, you have
right.
You have
okay,
volition.
So free will to do something.
Yeah. Yes.
Is the mind. It is consciousness.
Mind takes free will, and free will and mind are interrelated.
You said to me, I can explain it through reason. Explain it.
Yeah. So mind is your you can actually focus in yourself, and you can introspect.
That's not a definition.
No, since I'm not a psychologist, but I can
be a psychologist.
But I can give you. I can give you.
You said a moment ago. I can explain it.
Yeah, in a basic layman in basic layman terms, that mind is your consciousness is your mind, basically, which is dependent on your brain.
Okay, so
is dependent on your brain.
So,
if someone shoots
is it the
you,
brain?
Your mind is dead.
No. But if somebody shoots you, you're dead.
Yeah. Your mind is dead as well.
As an analogy. So
and your mind is dead as well.
No, because you're dead.
Yeah, and your mind is connected to your body, so and it's integrated.
Is it?
I don't have it. Yeah, I don't have a mind-body problem, which all the philosophers begin.
So tell me, what about the brain being a receiving device of consciousness? As highlighted by Huxley, as highlighted by all these evidences.
Yeah, you can receive it. You can.
So if you're receiving it, so it's not in the brain. Then, if you're receiving it.
No. Brain is the organ that uses it. For example, I'll give you another
receiving
example.
device. Let me simplify for you. For the receiving device, consciousness is non-local. That means it does not live in the brain. It's like a telephone picking up the signal. The signal does not live in the brain.
Don't treat it like a material.
The brain is material.
Yeah, brain is material, but consciousness
is consciousness
is
immaterial? It's
immaterial. It is a process. So
I'll give you. If it's non-local, it is not a process. Then it is a thing. So you have to make up your mind. Which is it? Like these are opposites.
It's a software. You're holding a phone in your hand. It's a software.
So it is in the brain. It is in the brain then. So software is in the computer. So it's so basically consciousness, what you're saying, but all these studies that have shown non-local consciousness. So I gave the example of all the case studies of the people, for example, when the book I've got here by the award-winning cardiologist who showed over decades of research that when people went into cardiac arrest, even after brain death, right, when there was no brain activity being picked up, yet people were having, when they had visions.
So it's not that the whole brain was the whole brain cells
were the faculties that are used, like the frontal cortex and these things that have visions, that will the creative elements that will show things, these were not flagging up at all. Activity was dead on them. So his whole book is based on, in fact, with Haris Sultan, when I showed it to him in our debate, this was one of the, obviously there is no response to these things.
Can I give you an analogy to make you understand this brain and mind thing? For example,
you can make me understand, it would be amazing.
Yes. For example, vision. You know, vision does not just exist without any body, any hardware. Vision is like your software. It depends on your hardware, which is your eyes. So if you terminate your eyes, if you gorge your eyes out, vision dies. Your vision dies.
Okay,
You can't see anymore. This is exactly how
just to
mind
clarify
is.
for you. Okay, so first of all, okay, it's the visual cortex in the brain that interprets vision, the signals. Okay, the retina is not the processing thing. So it's actually the brain. So that analogy actually doesn't fit. That analogy actually supports what I'm saying, in the sense that the brain, the visual cortex, right, it is picking up the signals from the retina of the outside world, though. Now it's interpreting it through, yes, the electrochemical signals that are then being interpreted by the visual cortex and being projected back to you to understand what is going on and what you're seeing. But the things outside do actually exist outside. So me seeing this microphone, although I'm seeing it inside my head, it actually has an existence outside.
Exactly. It does.
So consciousness, even if it is being processed by the brain, as in it's being picked up by the brain, does not negate that the consciousness does not have an existence.
It does have an existence. Yeah, it does have an existence, but it is.
You're saying that consciousness, it's
connected with mind.
to the brain.
Sorry. Yeah, it is connected with the brain. It is connected. Once
but there's no evidence to show that.
Once brain is dead and it was rotted in the grave, there is
no, but that doesn't make any sense. That's like saying, look, the visual cortex is what interprets vision. Yeah, going back to your. But if somebody was to gorge your eyes out, now you no longer can see because they've destroyed the eyes. But the eyes were not what were producing vision for you. It was actually the visual cortex. But they are the receptors. Now, if you damage the receptor, obviously it doesn't work. Like
your brain is your receptor.
If I damage this phone, it's not going to work. It doesn't mean the signal doesn't exist anymore. The signal still exists.
Similarly,
but the phone is broken. So if somebody was to shoot me in the brain, or they would shoot me and I die. Now, obviously, I don't exist, so I can't be picking up the signal. That's not an argument against non-local consciousness. That's just to say, well, if the transmitter doesn't exist, obviously, how can it be picking up the signal?
Yeah. How can you be picking up the signal? You won't be functioning, and that's called being dead.
But that doesn't mean that doesn't show the signal doesn't exist.
Yeah, signal exists because it's sorry,
look,
your brain.
Let me simplify it for you. This phone, it picks up a signal. It does not generate the signal. But if I smash this phone, it doesn't pick up the signal. But it doesn't mean the signal was being made by this phone just because I smashed it. The signal was still out there. It was being picked up by the phone.
And your consciousness is not out there, Mufti Sahib. It is connected to your brain. It is out there.
No, but how do you?
Can your consciousness go and control other consciousnesses like mine?
Right. Okay. Okay. Now
you can only do that through language.
I do argue. No.
You can only do that through language and by convincing.
There have been. Okay. Tell me something. There's been several studies on people can tell that they're being stared at. Yeah. I don't know. Are you aware of these studies?
Are stared up like
stared to look at. If somebody is staring at someone, studies have demonstrated beyond probability human beings can tell when somebody is staring at them.
Well,
are you familiar with that?
Yes, that means
so
your senses are working.
No, what sense? Okay, what sense? Is picking
for example, if someone staring at you, you probably can notice there.
What sense?
For example, the sense of sight. The sense of sight.
No, you're not looking at them staring at you. When people are being stared at, so I'm walking, somebody's staring at me from there. Most people, when being stared at, can detect somehow that somebody is staring at me, and they look. Now, there's been actual studies on this, several studies in psychology. You can actually just Google the results. They are above probability. So for them to be random, they're way above probability for that. Now, they can't explain how human beings can tell, but they can tell more often than not than somebody is staring at them.
There is very sensitive senses. They're
What
very
sense?
sensitive.
Which sense?
For example, the sense of sight, the sense of smell, the sense of touching.
Which sense? No, so somebody's looking at me.
Yeah.
Right. So somebody's in that building. They're looking at me.
Sometimes,
I'm walking the road. I get this
detect.
feeling somebody is staring at me. I'm not making these studies up, by the way. You could just Google them. Right. So what sense? Is my sense of smell telling me somebody is staring at me from that?
This is exactly, this is exactly like the Bollywood movies when, the Shah Rukh Khan meets Hrithik Roshan and the ma basically kind of, sense.
Have you seen?
I sense there's another sense.
Yeah, but why? No, but why are you finding that funny?
It's funny
telepathy
because
and low level. Yeah,
it's nonsense. Telepathy is nonsense.
No, but telepathy depends what you mean.
See, now you're believing it's magic.
No. Depends what you mean by this. This is why I didn't use the word telepathy, because depends what you mean by it. Like if you mean by it, like somebody, I'm talking here and you're completely understanding my thing. I'm not meaning that by it. I'm meaning very low level connections. Like, so for example, there have been studies that many people in their life, you've probably experienced this. Many people have sometimes picked up a phone without looking who's calling and known who is calling. Now, sometimes it could just make sense because I'm expecting a call, but on many occasions, people have just out of the blue. They've not, like you've thought about somebody today who you've not thought about for 4 or 5 years, and today he phones you.
Yeah.
Dogs, for example, dogs are a very good example of study. This, once again, you can check the research. Dogs know when their owners are coming home from work, like at a particular time, even though they're not close. They are still quite far not to be able to be picked up. The dog is inside the building and the dogs get restless. They
have
tell.
a very sensitive sense of smell. They can smell you.
No, in the house, and the other person, because the other person's in a car, he's not outside the house. He is reasonably still far. It cannot be picked up by the olfactory senses. And the dog is inside.
Mufti Sahib, I challenge you to close your eyes and drive with your sense without
not you. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking. Look, just because you're not familiar with this research does not mean that, like, you see, you're arguing from a point of ignorance. Like, that's the difference. You said a moment ago, I don't know about psychology. Now, I'm telling you all these studies exist. Now, what about the study of where you've got brain correlation? So where they had people in one room with a loved one in the other room, where they showed them certain lights and it triggered certain brain activity, neural activity, which would correlate brain correlation, distant brain correlation studies, where it would correlate that the loved one would demonstrate similar neural activity without seeing the lights. These studies exist, but just because you're not familiar with them,
there are also
from a point of ignorance. Not from a point of evidence or academia.
There's also studies done, for example, and these are basically sensationalizations. There are also studies done of janam, punarjanam, like, for example, reincarnations. Like, people were born and their consciousness is connected with this consciousness. I mean, this is nonsense. But you can see that there are people.
Let me ask you something. Look, I'm not saying. Look. People can present theories. No, wait there. This, what I've said to you, has actually, I'm quoting to you psychologists and scientists. I'm not quoting to you. I'm not quoting to you some guru. These studies of distant brain correlation, this distance of psychokinetic, this kind of psi phenomena where you have low level. You see, when you said telepathy, I didn't use that word on purpose because I don't like the term, because obviously people understand by it. No, because of what urban myths have polluted it. So urban myths have, you have technical words and you have other common usage. So people would say, oh, this is telepathy. I'm talking right now. I'm telling you about a storybook and you're picking it up. But it's not like that. But it is true. What you said, a mother and a child is above probability. When the child has been in danger, the mother has sensed anxiety. These levels, these things exist, and beyond levels of probability. These are not random. Like if you took it at random, it would not appear like that from a scientific perspective. I was
we have something like spider sense, like that. Spider sense.
Yeah, but you see,
Or,
just
or
because
the
you
law of
don't
attraction.
know about these studies, you see, that is an argument from ignorance. It
prefer
is not an
five senses.
argument from evidence.
I
You're
prefer
just
my
saying,
five senses, and my five senses are connected with reality, are connected with my brain, not.
okay, okay. Let me ask you then. Let me ask you, right? Okay.
Prove me something from these five senses.
Okay, sure. How do you know this is not a dream?
How I know?
Yeah, how do you know that this isn't just a dream?
Because I can observe. I can observe.
But what makes you think you can't observe in a dream?
Yeah, because dream world is totally different in my dream world.
But if this is a dream, then this is that dream world.
I've been practicing what's it called?
Let's say you are just a brain in a jar somewhere, right? That's that's all you are. You're not, and this is really just a dream that you're having.
Yeah. This is Descartesian way of thinking.
No, it's not. I'm not asking about Cartesian stuff. I'm asking. You asked me to ask you something and you will be able to prove it with your senses. Prove it to me that this is not a dream.
Because I can observe. This is like Platonic.
No, but what makes you think you can't? In your dreams, you can't observe?
I can, but in my dreams are not wishy-washy. They're woozy, wishy-washy. Some things don't make sense. This is not dream. This reality has identity.
How do you know this isn't a dream? How?
Because this reality has identity. This reality has identity. Something called law of identity. Are you familiar with law of identity?
Prove to me, like how the fact that this universe has an identity. Why can't it have an identity in a dream?
Because dreams are wishy-washy. You can basically
Where do you get that law from? Is that a law? Is that a law? Is that a law?
When you sleep tonight, Mufti Sahib.
No, I never asked you that. I asked you
when you sleep tonight. When you sleep tonight,
look, listen. No. I'm not talking about my dreams. I'm asking you. You're saying dreams must be wishy-washy. Where do you get this law from?
Introspect.
No, I never asked you. If your introspection is based on a dream, then it's going to be in accordance with that dream, isn't it?
Over here in reality,
how do you know this is reality? This is not a dream.
This is why I'm far ahead, because I know this is reality.
How do you know? How? Explain to me.
Because of the law of identity, I can observe. For example, I have.
But that look. Please answer the question if you can answer it, or just be honest. Look, I've asked you.
I'm honest. You're not being honest, Mufti Sahib. I'm so sorry.
Wallahi, no. Either you're oblivious or you're not being honest. Because I can tell you that the greatest minds in this world have all acknowledged it is impossible to prove
don't care
that
about
this is. No, listen.
Those greatest minds. Basically.
Look, then either you're arguing from stupidity, or you're arguing. So what argument do you have that this is not a dream?
Can you observe?
Tell me one.
You can observe, right?
Yeah.
You have the sense of observation, right? You can observe that the things you hold in your hand, for example, that cell phone that you hold, it has an identity, right? It cannot become a cat. Yeah. This cell phone cannot become a cat, despite the fact that you have certain traditions where it says that a staff can become a snake. But we can put that aside.
So this thing
in dreams it can happen. In dreams,
but who told you that?
There is no one told me. I observed it. I have confidence in my observation.
Can you have a dream within a dream?
You can have that, but
so in this dream, you've had dreams where things morph, but in your outer dream, they don't.
Yeah. But I can observe it. Because the things that in my dreams, for example, the things do not.
Those are the dreams you're having. But those are the dreams you're having within this dream. But how do you know the outer dream? How do you know how that behaves?
Because of the law of identity.
Yeah, because of the law of identity. You only know that by the dream you're having within this dream, though. You see, you can have a dream within a dream, can't you? So right now, this wakeful state, I'm telling you, is just a dream. And I'm telling you to prove it to me it's not. And you're saying, I can tell you it's not because the dreams I have within this state, they
No, I
behave
said
differently.
law of identity. I said law of identity.
But they only occur to you in this state. I'm
Yes.
telling you, this whole state.
There is no
is a
law
dream.
of identity in dream world. There isn't any law of identity
Brother, I
in
think,
dream.
you know, at this stage, we're just wasting time because you're just arguing out of arrogance and stubbornness. Like, I
No,
can
out of
tell you in
confidence.
all honesty, no, if it's confidence, then it's confidence in stupidity. Because
it's confidence in reality. I believe in reality. You believe in magic. You believe in illusions.
First of all, I don't believe in illusions. Secondly, I'm more
this
than
is
happy.
not even reality.
I've given you plenty of time.
You're making me a skeptic. You're making a skeptic.
I'm asking you to one simple thing. I ask you, and this is going to be a problem that you will struggle with throughout your life, right? I'm asking you on honesty and transparency, and I can tell, wallahi, I can tell. I know it's not sacred to you, but it's to me. I can tell in this conversation you're not prepared to be transparent, and I can tell that by just the argument that you were just doing a moment ago. Now, if that's fine, look, it's your life, it's your views, but if that's your outlook on life, then you will never attain a truer sense of understanding. Because look, you're just being stubborn. Like I told you a moment ago that, look, I can tell you that this argument, this is it. This, what I'm telling you is the, but you wouldn't accept, like your point is, no, I don't care what I'm telling you, that this is a fact of this world, that you cannot prove this world to not be a dream. That is a fact. As far as things, nobody can prove this world is not a dream. And you can just Google if you trust Google more. Now, you saying any answer you say is either then based on stupidity or it's just based on stubbornness.
Law of identity.
But the law of identity can be from within the dream.
No, it cannot. Did you observe your dreams? Law of identity does not exist in your dreams.
Look, see, now the fact that you can't either understand it or stubborn to do so,
does
it just goes to show either way.
Do you think law?
All right. Okay.
Look, I love your.
Right. It's been.
Your
I have entertained some of your questions, and maybe for viewers as well. You can watch my videos. I would seriously tell you, my serious advice is you need to humble yourself from this stubbornness, okay? Because in all honesty, it's either because I refuse to, I don't want to choose the latter, that is just because you're stupid. That's I wouldn't want to I would not want that to be the reality, right? Because the reality in this discussion, I can clearly see you're not moving beyond certain points which are very factual. They don't go, it's either this, either that. And Chalo, the point is, anyway, speak to your gurus and ask them.
I have no gurus. I have my observations. I don't have any gurus.
You see, this journey it's a long journey. Okay, this whole journey of life, of faith, of understandings. I see the fact that institutionalized religion is tainted. It definitely is. But one, there's a very interesting verse of the Quran that وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنْآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَى أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا, that do not let people, when they have been unjust to you, or they have been tyrannical, or they have been oppressive or wrongdoers, do not let that action of theirs eventually render you into someone who moves away from justice or the truth. Like, because you will see that, look, religion, a lot of people in religion are toxic. A lot of people in religion are poisoned. They're hateful. They're very oppressive. But don't let that make you become just the same thing. Like, because you hate on them. No,
I don't care about those.
It doesn't matter what we say.
They're not the problem. The problem is people who actually who don't believe in reality. They are the skeptics. Skeptics of reality.
Sure.
They're
now,
mystics.
it's not. Look, it's not that. It's not sometimes knowing. It's the things we're unaware of, the biases. Inshallah, I'll leave you with that. You have a good evening wherever you are.
Yeah. You too, Mufti Sahib. Goodbye.
Right, so people, we gotta wrap this up. It's going on. You know what? I'll take 1-2 quick. Right, so I've already had some of you guys on. Muzammil, I've had you on already. Caesar salad. Oh, right. There's no camera. Fahim, let me add you quickly to it. Assalamu alaikum, Fahim. How you doing, man? How you doing? Where you joining us from?
I'm in Canterbury.
Oh, rather.
Yeah.
The accent. Oh, well, rather from Canterbury.
Yeah.
Shukran for joining us at this ungodly hour. What are any comment, thoughts? We are keeping it a bit brief because I've been going on way too long, man.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about the soul a bit because you said it's consciousness, right?
Say that again. Oh, yeah. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
According to me, yeah.
I agree with that as well. So I just wanted to know if you think animals have a soul as well.
I feel that animals are not conscious the way we are. They don't have our level of kind of consciousness. This consciousness that we have is human, that I'm speaking of, is the human specific one.
Okay.
It doesn't mean they don't have life and conscious. See, consciousness is used in many ways. Somebody say he's unconscious, he's conscious. It's a term that has many different meanings to different people. What I mean by it is we have that greater reflexive ability to conceptualize things. That, to me, is the ruh that is enabling, triggering that. So animals don't have that. They don't have that level of ability. They have some, if you want to use the word consciousness, they have a lower level of consciousness, but it's nothing compared to what we have. Yeah.
So would animals like go to heaven and hell after they die?
You see, it's not the afterworld. The world of the afterlife is not something we can comprehend, really. Will there be other creatures in this world, in the afterworld? There will be. I feel that there will be. But must they be the creatures that continued from here? I don't think so. No. I think more like the main thing is, in my understanding, is the human species. We are, in many ways, we're kind of like a simulation in this world.
Yeah.
It's like that. Yeah. So it's us that counts. In that, it doesn't mean we should still watch out for the environment and watch over animals and all of that, but they are not the main characters of that simulation, so to understand. Yeah.
Do you think we have an obligation to like minimize animal suffering and stuff like that?
Right now, yes, it's right. Okay, so where we can, where we are afflicting it, then of course, or where the environment around us because of us is afflicting it, then yes. Otherwise, no. We don't have an obligation to just intervene in nature. So do we have an obligation to prevent the lion from hunting? No, we don't. Yeah.
Do we have an obligation to like not hunt as well? Because so what's your response usually to like veganism and vegetarianism and stuff like that?
You see, I'm not a vegetarian.
Yeah, I'm not.
I respect people who are, but I'm not. To me, I feel that I am against cruelty of this kind of factory, the way, the conditions in which animals are being kept. I'm against that kind of stuff. That's cruel, but I'm not against hunting per se. Like, I would feel that it is just another part of nature. We are ultimately part of nature. Animals hunt each other, and humans are also animals within that chain who will hunt other animals. I I just feel that's the laws of nature. I guess I do accept that it is cruel. Sorry, not cruel. It is brutal. It has a brutal perspective to it. But such is nature. I feel nature is brutal. But that brutality is an intrinsic and inherent part for the dynamism of life, and for evolution to have flourished, it was a necessary component. You see where sometimes in certain places where certain elements are removed, the ecological outcome is not actually favorable. It becomes massively problematic. When certain predators are removed, you think, oh, that's a kind thing. But it actually, if you look at some of the ecological studies where certain complete landscapes have been devastated because certain predatorial elements were removed, who no longer could hunt something, which then in turn would not hunt this, which then in turn led to, and it leads to it upsets the kind of balance. I'm not saying, I get the fact that it is greedy, that we we eat animals, and it's not pretty, and it's visually disturbing, and on our conscience, I think it's disturbing as well. But it is nature, it is the world.
Because I think the difference between us and most predators is that they're carnivores, so they have to live on meat, whereas I think humans, they don't necessarily need to have meat. It is just greediness and just wanting it, basically. Because I believe at some point in our evolutionary history, we would have to have meat at some point, which is why we evolved to eat it. But that would have been at a point where there was nothing else left. But I think now, there's a lot of alternatives that we have that are arguably less cruel.
You see, I agree that, we are omnivores, and you're right, we can survive on a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet, we can survive. But then what's the point of such survival? I'm joking. If you're going to live a totally vegan, gluten-free life, then you might as well just put yourself out of the misery now. And no, I'm joking. No, I do agree we can survive. We can do it. I don't know about the fact that I don't agree that we are herbivores by default. We're not. But we can survive on a vegetarian. So the fact that we are designed in certain ways with certain teeth and certain things, that we are definitely designed and have evolved with a meat-eating lifestyle. But the difference is, can we survive without eating meat? We can. But I don't think so. I don't agree that we're not herbivores who have become who have adapted to a meat-eating lifestyle. I feel we are carnivores by default, but we can survive without it. So, I don't know. I don't know whether people might disagree with me on that, but I'm just saying the way I see it. By default, we're not vegetarians. I don't know if you agree with that. But that's how I see it. By default, we're not. But we can live like that if we had to. So the question is, why don't we live like that?
Yeah.
I would say, well, part of it is because by default we were carnivores. So we will forever we will have that kind of yearning for meat, I feel. But what we can do is we can substitute it with artificial meat.
Yeah.
As technology improves. So if we had, let's say we had chicken that was chicken, same protein, without it being from a chicken. It was made in a lab. In that case, would I encourage us eating that chicken as opposed to the actual chicken? So if we've got artificial chicken and it's had the same amount of protein, same amount of amino acids, same amount of, it could do all of that, then Yeah, sure, of course. I would say because the body wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So the body would just want meat, and that would be meat, even though it's fake meat. But it would still, for the body, it would quench it, what it wants. So yeah, definitely, if we had that widespread, like you could go get a burger, you could eat a steak, but it's fake meat, but it still gives you all the things that the steak would have. I would definitely support it, and I would definitely become that version of a of a vegan. But I think up until then, yeah. But I do agree with the cruelty in which animals are being kept is wrong. 100% agree with that. Yeah.
So do you not think that by like paying the meat industry and the dairy industry that you're supporting that cruelty?
Say that again. Am I? Yeah, because I'm going to buy that burger.
Yeah.
Somebody has to factory it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you see, that world, that market is way too huge for one individual or two or 100 or 1,000. You see, as long as there are human beings, there will be that market. So the only way it will cease to exist is if we had an equally powerful market that was that could provide substitute meat, which I know scientists are on the verge of. Like, they have made it, but they haven't mass produced it. Otherwise, the market wouldn't kind of dwindle away with just one or two people stop not eating.
Isn't that kind of like saying that there's no point of me giving like £1 or £10 to charity because that's not gonna like solve everything? Like, the amount I'm giving is not really adding to the total. Isn't that kind of the same kind of logic?
You see, the question would come, okay, let me flip this back then. It's like I ask many people who are vegan or vegetarian, that in that case, why should we not prevent the lion from hunting?
Because the lion needs to hunt to fulfill its diet.
But we can physically intervene, though.
But how do we like make sure the lion survives?
No, so the point is, no, that's not our job. We're just going to prevent the murder of the gazelle. So is it okay under our watch to allow this gazelle to get eaten?
If it necessitates.
So let's say we've got a huge national park that's got some wildlife in it, and this is under our, like, we can actually do something about this massive piece of land that we've got, and in it are lions, let's say, and you've got gazelles or deers. Now, we can physically prevent these from getting murdered. We can do it.
Yeah.
Or we can just turn a blind eye and let them get butchered just because the lions need to eat them.
Yeah. Yeah, so if the lions don't eat them, then the lions will die, right?
But that's not our responsibility. We're not killing them.
No.
We are saving bloodshed.
Yeah, but it's like we're basically like killing them by omission almost.
No, so
it's like
you agree. So you're saying, let them, as an active choice, let them kill the deers,
or let the lions die, right?
No, if something dies, when it dies, that's, it hasn't died yet, has it? Hasn't died because of us. It's just dying. That lion could just fall ill with cancer and it could just drop dead. It could just die. But here, these things, we are making an active choice to allow this. Look, here's this lion coming running. Yeah. I can close the door and save this deer. Yeah. I just have to close the gate. But I am actively saying, you know what? Nah. Consciously, it's a conscientious decision. Let this deer get killed. You agree? I should let it get killed. I should. So I'm participating in the murder of this deer.
I personally wouldn't.
So you would prevent it from getting killed.
Yeah.
So you feel, is it humanity should do that as a collective?
to some degree, but
you feel we should?
No, I think if we'd need
That's
to
rather cruel.
Yeah, it is. But I think if it's between the death of the lion and the death of the deer is going to suffer more than the lion is, I would think, right?
So it's about suffering.
Yeah, I think it's about suffering. I think.
So okay, so in that case, why don't you just shoot the deer?
Yeah.
Instant death.
Yeah.
And just give it.
Yeah.
To the lion.
I think that would be like.
So you would agree on instantly massacring deers, just to make the lion happy, but as long as it's instant massacre.
Yeah, then it would minimize the pain.
So in a way, to minimize the pain, what if we, to make it easy, rounded all the deers up together in one massive place? With one switch of a button, they just instantly died.
Yeah.
And that thought, my friend, is just a step away from the battery farms. I mean, where they've got all these cows in one place.
But it's not. But they don't instantly die. They'll have to. Yeah. I think with
I said it's a step away. So is it the concept of killing them, or is the concept of just how they die?
It's the concept of suffering, because they're sentient creatures like us, and they experience.
But they're always going to suffer if you kill them.
Well, then I think in our case we don't have to kill them because we don't have to eat them.
Yeah, but what about where we can intervene and stop them from being killed and suffering?
Yeah, then we just go with the option of killing them with the least possible pain, right?
So we should run around, hunt them proactively, and feed them to the other carnivores.
Like, yeah, if it's practical, yeah.
You've got to be the most radical vegetarian or vegan I've ever heard. We should
I'm not
proactively hunt.
I eat meat, so
we should proactively hunt all these damn things.
I think it's. I'm just like. It's just like a thought experiment, basically. Just
no. I agree with you. You know what it is? I agree that this is actually one of those kind of catch-22s that I don't think people can get out of. It is just the world that we live in. It's a dog-eat-dog world. It's a very brutal world. And we are a part of it, and we are trying to apply a certain amount of structure and civility to it. But we won't be able to change nature. We just won't be able to. And nature is, by its definition, brutal.
Isn't that the is-ought fallacy, that since it is like that, it ought to be like that, and we shouldn't do anything to change it?
I mean, in this particular case, you agreed that, look, when it was about should we actively save these animals, and you said, well, okay, in your case, you said we should proactively go around killing them off and just to feed them. I mean, that's in many ways much more brutal, because you're proactively killing. You're not even letting the other things kill.
Yeah, but
you're killing them.
But it's less suffering that way.
That's like the fanatic who says, look, don't worry, I'm killing you, it's all for the sake of God, don't worry, you'll be pleased to know I'm doing this upon wudu.
I think another thing is with the milk industry.
Milk.
Yeah, with dairy.
Yeah.
The cows. The cows have to be they have to be raped, essentially.
Cows have to be raped.
Yeah.
I don't know if wait, I need my solicitor on this call. What kind of things have you been watching? Huh?
It's just what happens in the dairy farms, because
they have to rape cows.
They have to artificially inseminate them.
Oh, that's raping. Artificially inseminating.
I mean, that's what it's easier to say rape. So
what's the alternative consent?
I mean, I guess.
I don't think nature works quite that way. I don't think animals go around consenting in that way that human beings.
But do you think it's not possible for an animal to be raped?
No, it is, but I think that's pretty much a huge part of nature is just that.
Of animals being raped.
I mean, I don't think you'd use the word rape. I think people may use it, but I wouldn't use it in nature. That's like saying you don't use the word murder in nature, do you? You don't say this lion murdered the gazelle. You say he killed him.
Right.
Because there's a sense of kind of responsibility that you're kind of attributing to the culprit. So when you say rape, you're attributing this element of there ought to be consent and this kind of, and obviously nature doesn't work quite that way, that, you know, it doesn't work with human reasoning. It just has instincts and it just acts on instinct. So I mean, maybe people, I have read the term things like duck rape, where there's a kind of gang rape of a duck, but I wouldn't personally use these terms with nature, because I think that's like using the word murder with nature. It doesn't really, or fraud with nature, you know, like this monkey, he defrauded the other monkey. You know, I wouldn't use it quite like that. Yeah. So, but these are problems that won't go away, I guess. Yeah.
In this case, it's the human doing it, though, to the cow.
Oh, right, yeah. And you're talking about the inseminating, artificially inseminating the cow.
And once they give birth to the baby cow, they take
them away. And no, I agree with you that I do agree that the conditions in which things are being kept and are wrong and very, you know, they're very. I don't know about brutal, but they're very kind of. I mean, they are brutal, but I'm thinking of a better word to describe it. But it's very. They are utterly unacceptable. They are treacherous conditions under which they've got, you know, these battery farms and chickens and the way they grow them and the way they, and with cows as well and stuff like. And I agree, all of that argument I believe can be improved, and hopefully will be improved with pressure from groups and organizations. But as to abolishing the kind of meat market, I just don't believe that would ever happen, because I feel that there's a deep-seated human kind of urge. Even if we don't recognize it, I think it's there at a subconscious level.
Do you think, like, even if we did develop artificial meat, there would still be some people that would want to have the natural?
No, then I think what would happen is the urges can't tell the difference. So they would be met. So it's like, yeah, like we haven't, like we develop a thirst and we need water. Now, if you, obviously there's natural water, but if you created water artificially, the body wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It would just be met with its urge being fulfilled. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be like the brain in a vat thing.
Just, I suppose so. But I think that would, I mean, the body is obviously mechanical and it has these impulses. And if they're being met, I guess. And it wouldn't really tell. And in fact, I'm sure many people would be happy with that. I would be very happy to, you know, switch immediately to artificial meat, provided it kind of provided the same thing. Yeah. Fahim, I have to say I'm very impressed, and I do like your concern, and I think that's. What do you do, by the way? What you a student or?
Yeah, I'm a student. I'm doing a master's in astronomy, space science, and astrophysics.
Bloody hell! Look at that! Oh, brother! That's really good, man. I have to say, wow. You're doing it, man. You're doing
it. I send you a lot of memes on Instagram. I think you see.
Do you? Okay. What's your page there?
It's just.
I'll tell you what. Or message me after this, and I'll look out for it, because I get a lot of messages, but sometimes I'm not sure who they, who they. Matching the faces to the profiles, but I'll look out for it now. Fahim, it's been epic, man. Shukran for sharing that thought experiment. Right, you're doing it. For a moment, you almost had me. I'm joking. Now, you've converted me. If you can provide me the alternative, I'll take it. Take care, man. Much love. Assalamu alaikum. Guys, it's been going on way too long, man. You know what? I need to, that reminds me, I need to go eat some food, honestly. You know what? Quick, Athar Khan. Assalamu alaikum. We've got to keep it brief, but where are you joining us from?
Sure. I live in New Jersey.
You're doing it. You're doing it.
So it's a pleasure to talk to you. Or I don't know the decorum. You understand Urdu or?
Ji, Urdu समझते हैं.
Okay. So I have few questions, Mufti Sahab. मैं आपको कुछ अर्सा पहले ही सुनना शुरू किया था, and you've been very inspiring and logical. तो जो क्वेश्चन थे मेरे वो 2-3 थे. एक तो ये कि शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस, क्या हमारा दीन मुकम्मल है कुरान में या उससे बाहर भी हमारा दीन है, लाइक सुन्ना या फिर हदीस?
Yeah, I mean, for the viewers, that the question is that is the deen complete within the Quran, or is there more to the deen outside of the Quran? You see, to me, the way I see it is the Quran. You see, this answer can be, or this question can sometimes be not purposely, but it can be misleading, as in it can lead people to, I'm not saying you're asking it in a misleading way, you're not, but it can, people expect a very binary response. They expect that there's an assumption, like when I ask a question, there's an assumption that there's an answer that matches that question. But the answer doesn't have to be that way. It's like if I asked, what is heavier, red or blue? Just because I asked the question doesn't mean the answer would, if there is an answer, would be like that. So in this case, obviously, there is an answer. The Quran is set out in such a way that it tells you that, look, this is the backbone to this deen. This is the scripture around which the deen will revolve. It's like the kind of sun in the solar system. But it teaches you that, look, there will be, and the Quran is giving this to you, that there will be atiullah wa atiur rasul, that there will be, things will also come from the Rasul, wa ulil amr, and things will come from other people as well. The Quran is telling you that take these things, but فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ, but you may disagree at times amongst yourselves. So I feel that our greater understanding of Islam is, it's kind of rooted in the Quran. But yes, the Quran is not going to go into finite detail about everything. The Quran really is going to tell you the important key messages, but it's going to plant certain seeds in explaining that, look, there will be something, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. There is a exemplary example for you in the Messenger of Allah. وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ. Why don't you take what the Messenger also expands on? The Quran will say, وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ. It will mention there will be other people. It will mention there will be, لَقَدْ كَانَ, there will be an ibrah in this. For who? لِأُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. Maybe everybody won't get it, but the ulil absar. So the answer is that the Quran will serve that central position, but the living tradition will revolve around it always, and that will reflect the day and age that it's in, if that makes much sense. Yeah, कुछ है वैसे लंबी दास्तान है, कुछ मुख्तसर बोल दिए हम.
Yeah, no, I do understand, but then Mufti Sahab, there raises more questions because मैंने जितना थोड़ा बहुत देखा है उसमें मुझे लगता है
आप कुछ ज़्यादा देख लो फिर.
Yeah, it really needs that. But इसीलिए मैं आपसे सवाल पूछ रहा हूँ.
नहीं, मजाक. जी आप कह रहे थे.
मैं वही कह रहा था कि so when Quran says that Quran is complete, when Quran says it is fully detailed, when Quran says, is this not sufficient for you, this book, then are we not taking the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala too lightly to go over and above or beyond Quran and look for the other sources? And
Very
if you
good
look for the other
question.
sources, does it not make our deen more complicated when Quran says it's very simple?
Sure. No, very good question. What I would say is that, you see, when it is true, the Quran is sufficient, but it's, you see, any statement is within, it's not in a vacuum, it's within a context. So when the Quran is saying that, is this revelation not sufficient for you, it's saying this to people who were from a different from a different tradition. It was saying it to people who were saying that it's not talking about, oh, when I say perform the Hajj, will Hajj have detail to it? That's not what it's talking about. It's not trying to say, oh, are you allowed to have road traffic laws? It's not talking about that. It's talking about people saying that, look, no, we're not going to accept, we've got this particular scripture. When the Prophet was amongst them, he was telling them about Islam. They weren't interested, or they were interested a bit and they were interested in, and it's addressing them. That's the context to it. So, yeah, I mean, otherwise the question is good, but that's what it means. It's within a context. It has to be contextualized.
So what?
Oh,
sorry.
No, I was going to say, inshallah, इसी पर इक्तिफा कर लेते हैं. What do you think? Because it's really late today. I'm surprised I've gone on. I was actually thinking I'll just do 2 hours today. अभी तो 4 घंटे होने वाले हैं.
No, I understand.
Let's wrap this up. Guys, it's been epic.
Much
love. Take care. People, it's been ever so awesome. You guys need to go get yourself some sleep, get yourself some rest. I need to go eat some food. Have an awesome day wherever you are. Much love, people. We have hit 20k subs on the YouTube. You're doing it, people. You're doing it. Do spread the love, spread the fitan and fasad, as I say. Instagram, if you want to message me, I will look out for your messages. Mufti, eat some good meat. I will try. Right. Much love. Salamullahi alaikum. Inshallah. Over and out, folks. Over and out.